In the not-so-distant future, the clear blue skies of our beloved Earth suddenly shattered. Immediately after, hordes of monsters poured out, laying waste to the planet. Wherever they went, all life was virtually wiped out. The lucky survivors were exiled into labyrinths, and the only way to return and save the world was to conquer the labyrinth they had chosen. Then, they had to gather together, combine their strength to destroy the monsters, and rescue our beautiful Earth. However, even at this first step, things were already proving to be incredibly difficult, because those who had conquered the labyrinths on their own had massive egos, each wanting to be the one giving orders for everyone else to follow. And so, countless internal battles erupted just to decide who would be the leader. Our protagonist's name is Kang Tae San. He, too, had overcome his labyrinth and returned to join the others. Being a strong and friendly person, he was respected by many of the other warriors. However, since there was no land to farm, no matter how much respect he earned, his diet consisted of nothing but potatoes. While he was having a heart-to-heart with his buddy, a loud commotion suddenly broke out. It seemed another person who had conquered their labyrinth had arrived to join the group, but this newcomer wanted to declare himself king the moment he arrived. He had already seriously injured countless warriors here. Realizing another young punk was stirring up trouble, Tae San had to drop his meal and rush over to handle it. Even though others tried to explain the situation and reason with him, the guy refused to listen. Instead, he glared daggers and immediately punched the man straight in the face. Witnessing the entire mess, Tae San's blood began to boil. He handed his potato to his friend, telling him to just hold it, not eat it, then slowly stepped forward to teach the young man a lesson. He calmly pointed out, "The Earth is already in chaos, and you're still here causing trouble like this? You really are just a brat." Seeing that words weren't getting through to him, as the guy just stood there with a smug look on his face, Tae San challenged him to a one-on-one duel. Knowing that our MC was just someone who had cleared a measly easy-level labyrinth, the newcomer was incredibly arrogant, confident he could wipe the floor with Tae San right then and there. Seeing that this little brat didn't know his place in the world, Tae San beckoned him over with a finger, as if calling a dog. Provoked, the guy's anger flared. He drew his sword and charged in for close combat. Since he had a bit of power, instead of a normal sword slash, Jong-un activated a powerful strike. His sword burst into flames, intending to take Tae San down in a single blow. However, thinking and doing are two completely different things. Facing the incredibly powerful slash that could split a mountain in two, Tae San showed not a hint of fear, standing perfectly still to see just how strong it really was. The moment the slash connected, dust and smoke billowed out, obscuring the entire corner of the courtyard. After delivering the blow, Jang-un's eyes widened, and he broke out in a cold sweat. He couldn't believe his opponent had caught his sword with just 3 fingers. Seeing how weak this guy seemed, Tae San was a bit disappointed. All talk, no action. It was so boring he didn't even want to speak. Seeing his opponent's overwhelming power, Jang-un was terrified, his body trembling uncontrollably. To make sure the young man wouldn't be so arrogant anymore, Tae San held the sword with his right hand, channeled an immense amount of internal energy into his left, and punched him straight in the gut. It was the first time in his life he had ever taken such a devastating punch. However, because he had learned a skill to absorb energy, he only felt a slight tickle. Seeing that his punch had no effect, Jang-un stepped back and taunted. What a difference in class. An easy-level player trying to fight a hard-level player. How absurd. Hearing those taunts, our protagonist clenched his fist and whispered, "You're finished, kid." He then activated a few additional attack stats to teach the young man a proper lesson. The buff wasn't much, just doubling his current attack power and completely ignoring the opponent's armor, that's all. Knowing that getting punched with an armor-piercing attack meant a very high chance of meeting his ancestors, Jang-un fearfully begged Tae San to stop. However, once the gun is loaded, you have to fire. Our protagonist slammed his opponent's head into the ground and then used his cloud-splitting palm. A single strike smashed the surrounding ground to pieces. The shockwave radiated outwards, covering a vast area. The total damage Jang-un had to absorb was 4,604. Though he was in immense pain, Tae San was about to show mercy and spare his life, when Jang-un, propping himself up, yelled, "Damn you! I thought if I cleared the labyrinth, I'd get to go home. Why is the Earth still overrun by monsters like this? What was the damn point of sending humanity into the labyrinths in the first place? It's all so meaningless." Since this was the first time humanity had ever faced such a crisis, no one was sure what they were supposed to do. All they could do was gather together and defeat the monsters step by step. After the fight, Tae San looked over at his friend to ask for his potato back. As for the seriously injured Jong-un, he had to be taken to the medical station for treatment. Hearing his friend praise his fighting skills, Tae San felt no joy, as he had just participated in a meaningless fight that did nothing to help the earth. He then strolled along, eating his potato. It didn't taste great, but he was lucky to have anything to fill his stomach. His friend trailed behind him, showering him with compliments about his powerful techniques, and wondering if he could teach him a few moves. With so much on his plate, as if he had the time to go around sharing his secrets, Tae San simply told him to keep diligently fighting monsters. He just got it, while munching on a piece of potato. Finally, the time has come for a beautiful girl carrying a ton of treasures to return. Her name is Zeon, and she is a total snack. Every curve is perfect, no adjustments needed. The two then went into a room for a little chat, and while looking at the random objects in the room, Tae San started complaining. The human race is on the brink of extinction, and you're still worried about these useless decorations? I don't get what the hell they're for. The world outside is teeming with monsters, yet this girl's main focus is visiting museums all over the world to loot items. Girls are just so hard to understand. As the strongest player in the world, she spoke up confidently. People need to have some kind of passion these days. Why don't you try finding a hobby for yourself, like I have? However, they were here to discuss business, so Tae San got straight to the point, asking the girl why she called him here. She got right down to it too, asking Tae San about the new guy from today, a hard mode player getting absolutely wrecked by an easy mode player like you. It's truly an unbelievable story. Then, the girl pulled up her system to flex on our protagonist, Lighten, level 2, 158. Her stats in attack, defense, and intelligence were all extremely impressive, far surpassing any ordinary player, as expected, from the world's strongest player. Looking at Zeon's incredibly impressive stats, Tae San had no idea why she was showing them to him. Are you trying to show off to me? Then, while he was at it, our protagonist also opened his system to see if his stats had increased at all lately. Kang Tae San, level 57, attack 49, HP 1021. All in all, his stats were very humble. A light flick from Zeon would be enough to send our protagonist to his grave instantly. Staring at those pitifully low stats, the girl was completely bewildered. She had no idea how stats like these could defeat a hard mode player. This guy's definitely hacking. The labyrinth is divided into 4 difficulties: easy, normal, hard, and solo. The moment a player clears a labyrinth, all evolution stops. This makes it impossible to get any stronger. The power difference between the difficulties is immense. A regular hard mode player's stats are just slightly higher than Tae San's. However, none of them could block even a single one of his attacks. The reason lies in the insanely OP skills that Tae San possesses. Then, to test his true power, Zeon stood up and unleashed her abilities, activating Lighten's supplementary skill. Add half of the base attack power. Activate Lighten's enhancement skill, doubling the attack power. Then, a strike came flying straight at our protagonist's face. Faced with such a powerful move, Tae San was visibly calm. He didn't even bother dodging and just stood there to take the hit. As expected, there's some kind of otherworldly power within him. Even though his stats are so low, the reality of it is just bizarre. The wall behind Tae San had a huge hole blown through it after that attack. Meanwhile, he just stood there, as if nothing had happened. It's just too unbelievable. Seeing how freaking OP he was, Zeon offered some praise. Total damage nullification, absolute judgment, multi-layered attack, mini time stop, all ridiculously powerful skills. Do you have about 200 skills? Tae San said, while dusting himself off. It's not that many, just around 230 skills or so. Hearing this, the girl was completely baffled. But we had to clear the entire tower just like you did. Could there be a hidden map we didn't know about? Hearing this, Tae San's face went blank. The most tiring thing is having to explain stuff to others. Besides, it was a long time ago. It's not like I can go back. So what's the point in asking? Zeon said as she sat back down. With your abilities, you should have chosen the solo difficulty, not easy. What a waste of talent. Tae San's skills are powerful, but most of them are applied based on stats. This means the current Tae San can't even use half of his skills. They'd been here for a while and still hadn't gotten to the main topic. Tae San urged the girl to hurry up. He needed to use the restroom and had been holding it in for a while. The girl finally revealed, I just got back from a scouting mission. I found out that the next wave is about to begin. After seeing it, Tae San's face went blank. He had no idea if humanity's current strength could withstand this new wave of monster attacks. Every time a wave like this occurred, many people died, and humanity's territory was significantly reduced. In the first wave, humanity lost soul. In the second wave, half of the hard mode players had to be sacrificed. In the third wave, humanity could only defend one small city. And this would be the fourth wave. Perhaps after this wave, there would be nothing left. The girl added that this time, the monsters would include 2 S rank, dozens of A rank, hundreds of B rank, and countless other minions. Hearing the enemy's numbers, Tae San put his hand to his forehead and thought to himself, even Zeon has a hard time taking down a single S rank, and now there are 2 of them, not to mention the dozens of A and B ranks. We're so dead. Seeing that Tae San seemed to be getting cold feet, the girl encouraged him, we have no choice but to fight. With your strength, you could probably take on 2 S ranks by yourself. As soon as his name was called, Tae San frowned and immediately dismissed the idea. I don't want to die yet. You'd better not be joking around like that. Then, Tae San got annoyed and opened the door, about to leave. As he walked, he said, if you're so good, you can go solve it yourself. If all those weak people behind us join the fight, they'll all just end up in coffins. The girl's expression turned cold. She replied coldly, it's better if the weak ones die. It saves us food. We only need strong people like you and me. Disagreeing with her inhumanity, Tae San continued on his way out. Seeing such a strong man defy her, the girl's annoyance was plain to see, her hand crackling with energy, as if she wanted to destroy the entire room. Outside, the young men who knew the fourth wave was coming were visibly tense, wondering if they would even make it back alive. This was truly a dangerous situation. And then, the day of the decisive battle arrived. Tae San might talk tough, but he couldn't just abandon everyone. He brought his trusty subordinate along, and they sat on the city wall, waiting for the monsters. A tense atmosphere enveloped the entire city, with thunder crashing dramatically. It only added to the ferocity of the coming battle. After a reality-tearing explosion, a space-time gate opened. Immediately, thousands of monsters poured out through the rift. Giant serpents, lizards, you name it, every species was there. Seeing them begin to swarm out, Tae San, who was standing on the wall, immediately jumped down. Before he left, he gave his subordinate an order for when the beasts swarmed down. Then, to get a detailed assessment of the situation, Tae San leaped high into the air to scan the map, checking their numbers and the location of the leader. When he saw 2 massive red dots in the middle of his screen, Tae San showed no fear and shot down like a rocket to confront them directly. After a quick scan revealed this was a close-quarters, knife-fighting room, Tae San pulled an incredibly sharp sword from his system. He then put on an extremely confident expression, as if he could make mincemeat out of all the monsters in this wave. To be sure, Tae San used his system to scan its stats. One was monster number 7, a mushroom type, a defensive type with an enormous amount of HP. However, being a defensive type didn't mean its attack power was weak. With just a slight crouch, it caused the ground around it to crack. The resulting shockwave could easily take down any D-rank player near it. Seeing it power up, Tae San quickly dashed away. He cursed in frustration. Over 148 million HP. How the hell am I supposed to kill this thing? Son of a bitch. After dodging the attack, Tae San jumped to a corner and continued to scan the other S-rank monster. It was monster number 5, a long-range attacker with over 1 million HP, in the shape of a giant octopus. Seeing that it looked more manageable than the mushroom, Tae San didn't hesitate for a second, even though it was an S rank. With his extraordinary agility and a set of skills far superior to those of ordinary players, his slightly lower attack and speed stats were more than compensated for. With just a single, light slash, Tae San easily lopped off a few of the octopus's tentacles, ready for a hot pot. However, that much damage was nothing to the monster. It continued to aim straight for him and lash out. Knowing that attacking the tentacles was useless, Tae San dashed in, aiming straight for its head. However, thinking and doing are 2 very different things. Seeing its prey right in front of it, the monster immediately opened its mouth and gathered a powerful electrical charge to attack him. Realizing the terrifying power of that blast, a direct hit would mean instant death. Tae San used a skill to nullify the first attack. It negated 100% of the damage, and he continued to charge towards its face. However, after that powerful blast, there were still dozens, even hundreds of laser beams from its tentacles. They shot out to attack him. Using his keen eyes, Tae San activated his future sight, observation haki, dodging every single laser beam aimed at him. Then, after countless attempts, he finally managed to land a stab on its head. However, that still wasn't much against an S-rank monster. After taking the hit, the giant octopus grew furious. It used its tentacles to crush Tae San. But once again, he used a skill to ignore all damage. Then he gave it another light slash. The frustrated monster had no idea why Tae San wasn't taking any damage. It didn't know if he was the monster or if times at times was the monster. The confusion was immense. After spotting its fatal weakness, our hero immediately leaped up. He was about to deliver a world-changing slash when the mushroom, which had been watching until now, saw its ally in danger and rushed in, using its own body to shield the squid. Observing from above, Tae San was a little surprised to see that they knew how to coordinate with each other. When the giant mushroom got close, the injured octopus immediately hid behind it, only revealing its tentacles. It continued attacking with laser beams. However, with his 200-plus transcendent skills, everything was all too simple for Tae San. He used the forced duel skill to isolate the giant mushroom, preventing them from teaming up. Seeing its ally trapped and no longer shielding it, the octopus was completely bewildered, having no idea what was happening. It immediately fired its lasers at the cage to rescue its ally, but it had no effect. After activating the forced duel skill, the system notified him that for 1 minute, only monster number 7 could deal damage to him. Facing it for the first time, Tae San wasn't sure how to handle it. For a moment, he wished his sister Zeon was there to finish it in a single blow, always leaving the tough jobs to me. I hate this. Then, knowing his base stats were still low, and he only had a lot of skills, Tae San immediately began activating buffs to boost his power. The first skill was Addition, which doubled the player's base damage. Next was Multiplication, which squared his damage. And finally, Absolute Judgment, which would inflict the opponent. Ignoring his armor entirely, knowing his offense was more than enough, Tae San confidently stepped forward to face the giant S-rank mushroom monster. It immediately lunged, revealing thousands of sharp teeth at its base, looking like it wanted to swallow him whole. Having only used skills to boost his attack and not his defense, Tae San knew that a single wrong move would mean instant death. So instead of trying to block, he used his incredible speed to dodge every single one of the monster's attacks. After closing in on the mushroom's mouth full of sharp teeth, Tae San went for a one-hit kill, unleashing his full power. His power was multiplied several times over, and combined with his ability to completely ignore the opponent's armor, he easily wiped the floor with it. The monster was hit relentlessly, its HP dropping non-stop. Just a few seconds after the explosion subsided, the monster was defeated. The system immediately announced the monster's demise. However, outside the challenge room, a colossal octopus was still waiting for him. The moment Tae San stepped out, he took the full force of its powerful strike, receiving 22,543 damage. Knowing that one more hit would be the end of him, Tae San clenched every muscle he had and activated his patience skill, reducing all incoming damage to 0 for 5 seconds. However, because the battle had dragged on for so long, despite having many powerful skills, Tae San's base mana was too low to use any more of them. He now had only 21,820 remaining. There was no other choice but to rely on basic attacks. Tae San began to chip away at it, bit by bit. From morning until night fell, he fought relentlessly, without a moment's rest. He whittled down the octopus's health with his meager attack power. After a long, arduous effort, its health dropped from 12 million to 500,000, 300,000, then just over 100,000. By now, it seemed Tae San had also reached his limit, panting heavily. But seeing its health bar was nearly empty, Tae San used every last ounce of his strength and charged in to finish it once and for all. After a full day of non-stop basic attacks, the second S-rank monster was finally knocked out. Seeing it lying motionless and wanting to make sure of his victory, Tae San slowly approached and gave it one final stab before heading back to base. As he walked through the battlefield, the sight of fallen warriors scattered everywhere filled him with sorrow. When he saw his best friend also lying on the ground, he nostalgically recalled their past memories. It was truly a precious friendship. In another corner, the strongest female warrior ever recorded was sitting motionless in front of a large rock. Tae San was terrified, wondering what kind of ridiculously powerful monster could have possibly defeated her. Just as he was about to carry her back to base, a sticky slime suddenly appeared on the ground, slowly forming a large puddle in front of Tae San. It then slowly transformed into a humanoid demon with fiery eyes. The moment it saw him, the monster sneered, "You're next, you little punk." But if there was one thing our protagonist had never been afraid of, it was a war of words. He immediately fired back, "Shut your mouth. I'm the main character. You think I'd be scared of a little punk like you?" And so they stood face to face, their eyes locked in a defiant stare. Since he was completely out of mana and stamina, trading insults was the only thing Tae San could do. Seeing that he was not only weak but also stubborn, the boss landed a devastating blow straight to his gut, sending Tae San flying and leaving him severely injured. Seeing the defiant look still on his face, the boss got pissed and began wailing on him relentlessly. After a moment, the system issued a constant warning. Your vitality has dropped to 0, activating nourishment. You are forced to stay alive for 1 more minute. Lying on the ground, coughing up blood in agony, Tae San cursed. God damn it. If I'm going to die, just let me die. Why force me to live for another minute just to take more of a beating? What a piece of crap system. It's like a bootleg arena of valor. Realizing Tae San wouldn't survive, the boss slowly approached Zeon. It wanted to see if she was still breathing so it could use her later. Seeing it about to do something despicable to the prettiest girl in the story, Tae San was furious. Knowing he didn't have much time left, he began to blame himself. If only I hadn't chosen the easy mode back then. If only I had gone solo. Then maybe things wouldn't have turned out like this. He then started blaming the incompetence of the other players. You people couldn't even train properly. Was it because you were too obsessed with the labyrinth? How could you be so weak after choosing the normal and hard difficulties? If you had just put in half the effort I did, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess. Finally, as if accepting his fate, Tae San lay face down on the ground, awaiting his death in the next few seconds. Just as he was about to give up the ghost, a glowing stone in Zeon's hand caught his eye. He was curious. Knowing she had protected it with her life, he figured it had to be something extraordinary. Tae San used the last of his strength to drag himself over to see what it was, completely ignoring the ridiculously powerful monster standing right beside him. Seeing his desperate effort, the system allowed him to use any one skill, free of all restrictions. Tae San's mind raced, and he chose the time stop skill. The system immediately complied, activating it instantly. A 100-meter radius was frozen in time for 2 minutes. As soon as he touched the stone, the system informed him that it was a colossal Sarira. Its function: to turn back time for a single user. 1 time only. Holy shit, is this a game hack? How the hell does this even exist? This is insane. Holding the relic in his hand, Tae San had no idea where his sister even found such an amazing item, and she didn't even tell me. Man, that was frustrating. But now, knowing he could change the outcome of this one-sided battle, Tae San looked up at the sky where the Demon King was tearing open space to escape, and gave a bright smile. See you in the next life. Then, just as the beast opened its massive jaws, ready to swallow him whole, he clenched the relic and returned to the past. During that transition, memories of his old life came rushing back. When I was a child, my parents always took their anger out on me. I believed their words, and being constantly put down, I started to think I was worthless. This weakness led me to choose easy mode, but this time, it's going to be different. I know my own value and talent now, so this time, humanity will definitely be victorious. And just like that, he returned to his familiar old room, a complete and utter mess, so filthy it would make anyone's skin crawl. To make sure his regression was successful, Tae San immediately grabbed his phone to check the date. The time was just before the new year, which meant the monster invasion of Earth would begin in just a few minutes. But who cares if disaster could strike at any moment? It's New Year's. I've got to celebrate first, and worry about the rest later. Scanning the room, he spotted a half-eaten slice of pizza in the corner. Tae San smeared some ketchup on it and took a deeply satisfying bite. For so long, all he'd eaten were potatoes and monster meat. To finally have a piece of delicious food, it was absolutely heavenly. He devoured the entire slice, leaving only a few small crumbs behind. After finishing his satisfying meal, Tae San thought to himself, I still don't get how my sister, Joan, knew about this treasure's existence and managed to find it. It's so surreal. And why didn't she just use it herself? That's the biggest question of all. Seeing the bustling streets below, Tae San, his head full of questions, stepped onto the balcony to watch the fireworks and think. It seemed no one knew about the impending disaster. Everyone was excitedly and happily welcoming New Year's Eve. They all believed things were about to get better. Unfortunately, in that very instant, the great catastrophe struck. A massive explosion ripped through the sky, terrifying everyone. Not knowing what was happening, they thought World War III had begun. Immediately after, space itself was torn asunder, and monsters poured out like a waterfall, tearing the world apart. Knowing this was an unchangeable event, Tae San watched with a cold detachment. As he observed, he recalled the past. Back then, I was terrified too, but now I know what it is. A B-rank monster, probably. A player on hard mode could fight it without any trouble. A few seconds later, the same notification appeared before everyone's eyes. Your world is about to be destroyed by invaders. Your weapons are useless against them, but do not worry. A powerful and benevolent entity has taken pity on you. They have decided to grant you a chance. You will be given a choice. Enter the labyrinth and conquer it. Nurture yourselves to become strong enough to protect your beloved Earth. Faced with the choice of easy, normal, hard, and solo, the system simulated each mode. Even ordinary or weak people can clear it if they try hard. Normal mode has less food, and definitely fewer rest spots than easy mode. Although it's hard to survive, you can still complete it if you do your best and don't fall into despair. Hard mode. This difficulty will test your limits. Food and rest spots are severely lacking. The monsters will risk their lives just to kill you, and if you can't keep yourself safe for even a moment, you will suffer a horrible death. Solo mode. This is a mode you play alone. You will not be able to meet others from your world. The only things you will see are hostile creatures, monsters, and NPCs. This place tests your luck, talent, intelligence, and strategic skills, and you will not be able to survive. If you value your life, please choose an easier mode. Knowing that only solo mode could help him save the world, Tae San didn't hesitate for a second and chose it immediately. He then slowly stepped inside, ready to face all the dangers that lay ahead. He expected it to be dark and eerie, but no. Tae San was transported to a place with a nostalgic and ancient atmosphere. The sound of birds chirping every now and then made him feel strangely at ease. To get a sense of the situation, Tae San opened the system to see if there was anything useful. The community was the only way to communicate with people in other difficulty modes. Players on the front lines used to share many methods and strategies, so it was incredibly helpful. But since everyone was a complete newbie right now, everything on the chat board was useless. Tae San closed the system and began exploring the labyrinth on his own. After wandering around the city for a while, Tae San finally came across an NPC dozing off on a street corner. As soon as he saw him, our protagonist recognized him as the gatekeeper NPC who guarded the labyrinth's entrance in easy mode. He was just an ordinary old man with white hair. Noticing someone approaching, the sleeping man jolted awake and spoke up. Well, someone's found their way here already? How? Surprising. I thought I'd be waiting here for at least a month. Recalling what his sister had told him before, in easy mode, the man was old and pretty lame. But in this solo mode, he looked younger and even stronger than Ron. If the gatekeeper is already this strong, I can't even imagine what the people inside are like. It's making me really curious. Seeing Tae San standing there silently, the gatekeeper spoke first. Congratulations to you. I am Brocken, the guardian who protects this place, and I will also be your guide. You failed and became a gatekeeper. Sounds pretty cool, right? I bet you've heard a little about this place when you were still outside, haven't you? Your world is about to be destroyed by invaders. This is a chance given by some noble higher power, granting you all an unnecessary act of mercy. Wouldn't it be more fun to just let everything be destroyed? Hearing his words, Tae San thought to himself, he speaks as if he's been through this himself. So what Lee Tian told me was true? The NPCs in solo mode are actual living beings. They're people from worlds that have already been destroyed. Seeing Tae San remain silent, Brocken pouted, completely baffled. Why is this weirdo so calm? If he came from a peaceful world, he should be scared out of his mind by now, right? I was planning to rough him up a bit before explaining, but he's not reacting at all. So, fulfilling his duty as an NPC, Brocken began his work, explaining everything to Tae San. Anyway, this is a labyrinth. Some call it a tower, but you can call it whatever you want. There are 100 floors in total, with major changes on every floor. Typically, the deeper you go, the harder it gets. In this labyrinth, you'll have to find your own food and water, and you'll also have to find necessary information on your own. That's all. Finding it all a bit convoluted, Tae San played dumb and asked casually, "Is that it? Nothing more special?" Brocken grimaced and continued, "So you want me to explain? Floor 1, floor 2, and so on? There are merchants inside. Go ask them." Then, the man swiped his hand through the air, pulling a sword and a spear out of thin air. Seeing Tae San still looking dazed and confused, Brocken drew his spear and thrust it straight at our protagonist, just to mess with him. However, he knew this guy didn't have any combat skills, and it'd be boring if he accidentally killed him. Brocken stopped the spear right near Tae San's shoulder, pulled it back, then gave a slight smirk, and handed the main character a crappy sword. Since he was given such a low-tier item, Tae San wasn't the least bit interested. Fearing he'd complain it was too little, Brocken also tossed him a pair of cheap gloves. Basically, the complete beginner's set, nothing missing. After handing out all the gear, the NPC continued. Besides those super-tier items, you'll get a few skills and some other miscellaneous stuff, but you can check that out for yourself later. Alright, go on in. Seeing the guy was of no more use, Tae San quietly stepped inside and began to explore the labyrinth. Standing outside, Brocken was completely baffled. That guy. He smiled, as if he was looking forward to entering the labyrinth. As the gatekeeper, I've met many challengers who were hailed as geniuses. Not a single one of them has ever completed this labyrinth. However, this guy might actually be able to do something different. It's not simply a matter of skill, but of the fundamental foundation that is the will to survive. It would be great if he could make it to the very end. Inside, Tae San walked while pulling up the system window. It stated that the labyrinth was created by a great mage from ancient times. Rumor has it that whoever completes it will be granted a single wish. This is a sealed world, where terrifying entities will always be silently lurking, and the living must die. The things here exist to oppress you, but if you can push through this deep and dark hell, eternal glory awaits you. Floor 1. Labyrinth entrance. The monsters here will die if stabbed. They aren't very strong. And with that, Tae San excitedly began his journey to conquer the labyrinth. He knew that, with this shoddy sword in hand, he wouldn't get anywhere. Remembering what his sister had told him, that merchants have lots of good items, if he had the money to buy out the entire shop, he could clear this game in a heartbeat. So, instead of senselessly rushing at the monsters, Tae San went looking for a merchant to see if he could buy anything on credit. Before doing business, the two cheerfully greeted each other. The man was quite surprised that someone had found their way here just a few hours after the server opened. It was truly surreal. Taking a look around the shop, Tae San didn't see anything. When he asked, the man boasted, "To display all of my items, even the entire first floor of the labyrinth wouldn't be enough space. And more importantly, I don't want just anyone seeing my wares." Tae San was utterly confused. If a shop owner doesn't sell things, what's he doing here? This game is such a joke. Seeing him stay quiet, the man frowned and added, "You think I want to be here? I had to leave my kingdom because of those damn monsters. Life is cruel. Besides, I don't want to show my treasures to ignorant fools. That's all. However, if you show me what you're really made of, I might change my mind." Then he directed his gaze towards a cellar below and added, "If you return alive, I will show you my items." The challenge seemed tough, but what other choice did he have? Tae San cast a doubtful look down at the cellar. Then, he turned and accepted the man's request, resolutely and without any fear, which made the shopkeeper completely baffled as he stared at Tae San. Normally, people would. He should be terrified and trembling, so why is he so strangely calm? Whatever, I'll just land the first blow. All in all, the job here is pretty chill. It doesn't matter if I sell anything or not. Tae San slowly began to explore the hidden dungeon within, the maze of corridors and rooms. The structure of the first floor was the same as in easy mode. It looked safe, with no dangers in sight, but that was just an illusion. As he was lost in thought, a pair of blood-red eyes stared out from the darkness towards him. Once illuminated by his torch, it turned out to be nothing more than a giant, mutated sewer rat. Because it was starving to death, the moment it saw a person, it wasn't scared at all. Instead, it charged aggressively, wanting to turn Tae San into its lunch. The moment he saw it, he recognized it as the fifth boss from easy mode. But on this difficulty level, it was nothing more than a small fry. Lost in thought, Tae San was bitten on the leg, causing the damage he received to B1. Pissed off, he countered with his sword, but the creature's speed was incredible. A novice warrior like Tae San couldn't possibly keep up with it. He recalled that on easy mode, it took a large group of people working together to defeat it. Now, he was all alone with pathetically low stats. He had almost zero chance of winning. No wonder that girl, John, ran away. Among those who had cleared the first floor, not a single one had ever willingly fought these giant rats. The labyrinth's reward principle was simple. Conquer what others cannot achieve. Accomplish a feat that everyone must acknowledge, and you will receive a worthy reward. His goal was to become stronger than anyone else in this place. With that thought, Tae San engaged in a fierce battle with the rat. Although he took a few more bites, he was still determined to finish it off. He slashed and stabbed repeatedly. Despite giving it his all, he couldn't even touch it, not even a little. Realizing that brute force was useless, he applied the biology knowledge he'd learned in school. Tae San paused to think. It was a living creature. It had to breathe. All creatures have tells before they make any move. The moment he pinpointed its moment of weakness, Tae San counterattacked. A system notification popped up. The great rat has been intimidated by you. Its decision-making speed has slowed. Seeing it break out in a cold sweat, Tae San thought to himself, it's trying to understand this situation with its tiny brain. It won't be able to attack my ankle anymore, so it'll aim for the next easiest spot to bite. It's Jumping ability is low, and it will aim for my neck. He knew his neck had no protection. One hit, and it would be game over. Noticing the worn-out leather bracer on his wrist that could block one attack, Tae San quickly raised it to intercept the giant rat's maw. Knowing it had fallen into his trap, Tae San lifted it up, a grin spreading across his face. Seeing his chance, he quickly used his left hand to pin it to the ground, while his right hand used the crappy sword to deliver a fatal stab to its stomach. As it bit the dust, Tae San coolly went back to see the ground shop owner. Seeing the young man return with a monster's corpse in hand, he was utterly astonished. For a level 1, to be able to defeat a level 5 monster was simply unbelievable. Just as the old man thought he had fled, Tae San pulled 2 items from his bag. They were great rat meat with 96% quality, which was edible, and a rat hide that could help the user resist the cold. As he took out the goods, he asked the owner, "Does your shop buy items? How much for this stuff?" Seeing that the meat was still warm, the old man fell into deep thought. This was definitely the real deal, and the best quality on the buffed market at that. It wasn't wrinkled or dirty, which meant he had hunted it perfectly. On top of that, he was still a young rookie who had just stepped into the labyrinth. It was truly hard to believe. Seeing Tae San's potential, he agreed to open his shop and sell items to him. Then, the shopkeeper cheerfully stood up, used his magic to open the wall behind him, and took out a large shield for him. The Temping Guard's system described it as a heavy shield, attack +1, defense +5. It was quite sturdy, capable of blocking many attacks at once. Holding the new item, Tae San was pretty excited, because in easy mode, he wouldn't get this until the 7th floor. However, the old man was just letting him touch it, as its price was a steep 500 gold. Right now, after killing the rat, Tae San only had 243 coins. He was gutted, figuring he'd have to come back for it later. Then the main character coolly turned to leave, telling the old man that once he had enough money, he'd be back to buy it. Seeing his determination, the old man was delighted and threw the shield to him, saying, "I'm giving it to you. Besides, you have 250 gold, right? I'll sell you a few useful things." Then, he pulled from thin air countless potions of all colors, blue, red, purple, yellow, along with rings and other things, something that had never happened to any adventurer before. Thinking it was expired junk, Tae San was about to refuse when the old man said, "What's with the hesitation? I'm just being nice. Am I not allowed to be nice? Just think of this as an investment." Gazing at the items the old man placed on the table, Tae San thought to himself, these are mostly liquid potions, ranging from ones that directly increase attack power to those that improve speed, and so on. These were all potions needed to clear the labyrinth, but not what he needed right this second. I've heard it's very difficult to get liquid potions in solo mode, and they're incredibly useful. Still, there's no need to buy these potions. Wait, these could just be traps set for me. I need to spend money on something more essential than potions. I need an item for direct attacks. A single bow could solve all my problems. Then, just as he was pulling out his wallet to pay, Tae San asked the man, "How much for a shoddy bow? I need to know how many monsters to farm to afford one." Seeing the young man was interested in bows, the old man eagerly fetched one for him, along with a few arrows, adding, "Did you know you can't restore your vitality inside the labyrinth? On the 1st level, the Fountain of Life can help you recover it. You can use it as much as you like, as long as you're still on the 1st level. I'll tell you the location, and I'll mark it on your map. There's a crazy old man there, but you should be fine." Seeing the man treat him so well just for killing a single rat, Tae San was completely stunned. He also told Rian about the Fountain of Life, but he was so disdainful and reluctant when he had to tell her, as if she'd starve to death just by going there. Why the change in attitude? Is it just because of the way I talked? No. Rian left without catching any giant rats, but I didn't run. I caught one and came back. That must be why his attitude changed. Then, after bidding the man farewell, Tae San began his journey to conquer the labyrinth. While farming monsters, he opened the chat channel to see how other players were doing. The system also kept sending notifications. You are entering a state of unconscious absorption. Your body and mind become one. A miraculous power will be engraved upon your soul. You have achieved spiritual enhancement. You cannot acquire skills because you are outside the labyrinth. Spiritual enhancement cancelled. That moment, when I fought those S-rankers, the moment my health of around 150,000 was wiped out, a window popped up. I was too tired to read it. Was the sealed skill released? When I return to the labyrinth, each skill remains the same, no matter how much time passes. When there's a problem I can't solve, I always choose to move straight ahead. And that's what I'll do now. I will head straight for my goal to become stronger than anyone else. Just when he was a few steps away from the fountain of life, brimming with excitement, Tae San suddenly found himself being surrounded. First one, then two, then a whole swarm of giant rats approached him. The system continuously sent warnings. You are in an extremely difficult situation. After scanning all of his opponents, Tae San assessed the situation. Just 3 of them could corner a grown adult. Even with their tiny brains, they'll soon realize they have the advantage. After observing them for a moment, Tae San finally pulled the gifted shield from his system inventory to fight. Seeing he had such a high-quality item, the rat's jaws dropped. Where the hell did this guy get the money for such good gear? However, with their overwhelming speed and numbers, the giant rats still charged recklessly at Tae San. Although he was outnumbered, with the sturdy shield in hand, our protagonist easily made short work of them. Moreover, on his way here, Tae San had killed a lot of monsters, leveling up several times and greatly increasing his attack and defense stats. In less than a minute, he had already taken out 2 of the rats. Only one remained, still not smart enough to run. It stared for a moment before making the worst decision of its life. It charged at Tae San, seeing the sucker walk right into the trap. Saving him the trouble of hunting it down, Tae San raised his shield and eagerly waited for it. Asterisk, swish, asterisk. After collecting his loot, he coolly walked out of the dark cave, searching for the path to the fountain of life. In just a few steps, Tae San arrived. The system continuously displayed instructions. This is a rest area within the labyrinth. Your enemies cannot enter at will, and the peace here will make you lazy. You have discovered the fountain of life for the first time. First discovery reward, permanent intelligence +1, permanent mana +2. Ignoring the dry notification messages, Tae San slowly stepped towards the stream and took a sip to see what would happen. It was no joke. As the cool water slowly trickled down, numerous auras of light appeared and enveloped Tae San, healing all the injuries he had sustained while fighting the monsters earlier. Knowing this was a rare safe haven in the entire dungeon, Tae San decided to rest and recover for the night. His journey would continue tomorrow. The next morning, instead of brushing his teeth and washing his face, Tae San logged into the group chat to see how far everyone else had gotten in the dungeon. Since it was everyone's first time exploring the dungeon, no one had any experience. Almost everyone was just following their gut, not knowing what else to do. After reading for a bit, Tae San thought to himself, most of these messages are from solo players. Players in other modes can meet and talk, but solo players can only communicate through the community chat. Then he checked his sister Rion's chat channel and saw that she was also at a loss, not knowing what to do. He never expected that the strongest, most confident player like Rion could also be so confused at the beginning. But maybe that's not it. Recalling her status window from the past, he mused, perhaps she was just a fragile person, hiding her true nature until the very end. Only 1 day has passed since the labyrinth opened for the solo players. Players usually enter the tower after a month, so many people are probably still alive. The reward for solo mode is totally worth the difficulty. Although he missed out on many rewards after quickly defeating the lion boss, he had become the strongest player. After sitting for a while, his back started to ache and his stomach rumbled. Tae San pulled out a piece of rat meat from his bag to eat. Since there was no refrigerator to preserve it, its quality had deteriorated rapidly. However, if he didn't eat, he'd starve, and if he ate, he'd be full. Although it didn't look very appetizing, what other choice did he have? Tae San dipped it in the water for a moment, and then popped it in his mouth to tide him over. Since it was raw rat meat full of bacteria, and no longer fresh, as soon as it hit his stomach, he was immediately poisoned, and started vomiting violently. The system announced that the food poisoning status would cause a rapid decrease in health over 2 days. If you don't use a healing potion or a health potion, you'll die an absurd death from diarrhea. Truly a nightmare status for a beginner. This is why those with prior experience always tell everyone to cook their food first. Because he was next to the fairy spring, Tae San recovered quickly. However, Tae San currently had no fire to cook his food, so to fight off starvation, he risked eating a piece of meat and then drinking a gulp of spring water to cure the poison. What an unexpected move. After chowing down on the raw rat meat, a system notification suddenly appeared. You have endured so many diseases that a resistance has formed. You have acquired the conditional continuous activation skill, disease resistance. Holy crap, getting poisoned also gets you an insanely OP skill. However, since it was only the first level, It only helped him resist poison from what he ate. That was still more than good enough. Later, when fighting monsters, he could just absorb them directly without wasting time cooking. Heh. He realized that pushing himself into dangerous situations could very well grant him new skills. So, after soaking in the cool water for a bit, Tae San decided to try drowning himself to see if he could get any other cool skills. Unbelievably, it actually worked. The moment he couldn't hold on any longer, the system announced, "You nearly died from holding your breath. You have acquired the conditional activation skill, hold breath. You have experienced a near-death state. You have acquired the conditional activation skill, brink of death." He thought he'd get one, but he got two. Panting heavily, Tae San was overjoyed. Just one day in, and he'd already gained several cool skills. This was truly beyond his expectations. After opening the system to check, he found that even though he had just acquired them, their proficiency was already over 50%, truly exceeding all expectations. However, another skill had only 1% proficiency. He really didn't understand how this damn game worked. Inexplicable events happened, frequently inside the labyrinth. I can't get caught up in every little detail, because I can create even more skills. Now is not the time to stop. Tae San then drew his sword and tried a few moves to see if his power had increased at all. There was something called skill combination. It's like when a certain skill meets a specific condition, it promotes the evolution of a new skill. You can only hold your breath while exerting yourself up to a certain limit. After swinging his sword wildly for a while, Tae San was exhausted, sweat pouring down so much it'd take 3 days to wipe off. However, all his effort was rewarded appropriately. The system continuously announced, "You have successfully performed multiple actions in a single breath, acquiring the special active skill, one breath strike. You have acquired more than 10 skills. You are now eligible to show them off to everyone." Seeing that he got a bunch of skills from just flailing around with no real form, Tae San stared at his shabby sword, grinning from ear to ear. Similar to how I predicted all the giant rats' movements before catching them, humans also have their own rhythm before they act, and activating Breathless makes this rhythm faster and easier to change. After examining his own basic stats for a while, Tae San decided to create a skill for himself that the system didn't provide. A main skill is often more valuable than 10 combined skills. It also helps me compensate for my stat deficiencies. For example, it can multiply or increase attack power. To put it simply, it can help identify hidden factors, from the ability to block attacks with nullification skills to the ability to stop time with time freeze. With just one main skill, you can have the power to overwhelm players of the same level. Because of such a powerful ability, the conditions and requirements to obtain it are extremely difficult. For example, all-around reconnaissance is only obtained after 2 or 3 evolutions of the reconnaissance skill. However, having a main skill at an early level is possible. So, what was he waiting for? Why not create it right now? Then, to test the new skills he had just comprehended, Tae San went into the dungeon to find the giant rats to experiment on. Just the other day, they were giving him a world of hurt, but now, the tables had turned. When he got bit, Tae San didn't even care, wanting to see if he'd get another cool skill when his health got low. And, of course, he actually did. After blocking the monster's direct charge with his shield, the system immediately announced, "You have obtained." He gained the block skill, and at the same time, the stats for his Master of Death and Master of Serenity skills also increased slightly. But that still wasn't enough to satisfy him. On the verge of death, Tae San didn't bother to heal up, stubbornly continuing to attack the mouse instead. In this maze, there are specific ways to acquire skills, and they're actually very simple. You can receive one from someone else. You can get one by completing a quest that someone else failed. Or finally, you can perform an action that mimics the skill's effect. For example, I acquired the hold breath skill by, well, holding my breath. And under that condition, I tried using my sword, which resulted in me acquiring the breathless strike skill. So, what if I want a skill that can negate a fatal blow? It's ridiculously simple. I just have to continuously take fatal blows from monsters. Since this was pretty much the weakest monster in the solo dungeon, Tae San was exploiting it to the fullest. He probably couldn't mess around like this with tougher monsters. And so, after blocking its attacks 49 times, Tae San finally acquired the patience skill. It was one of the rarest skills to obtain. Having achieved his goal, he casually swung his shield and sent the mouse to the afterlife. He then shoved its head to the ground and raised his arm as if he'd just defeated the final boss, looking like a complete goofball. After acquiring many new skills, Tae San walked over to the stream to heal his injuries. Once that was done, he opened the chat channel to see if anything interesting was happening when a white-haired, white-bearded old man slowly approached and spoke to him. The system sent an urgent notification. You have encountered a god chaser. Remembering that no monster dared to approach this divine spring, Tae San suspected this was just some NPC. The old man cheerfully struck up a conversation. You're an adventurer, aren't you? That's what we call those who explore the maze with the intent to conquer it. Just as he stammered, I guess so. The old man shot forward like a lightning bolt with a massive fist, giving Tae San no time to react. His face went completely blank. However, thanks to his reflexes, he managed to use his shield to try and block the attack. The incredibly powerful punch radiated immense energy, causing Tae San to break out in a cold sweat. As he took the hit, the system sent a notification. You have received the might of Tae San. Permanent strength has increased by 1. You have resonated with the might of Tae San. You have received a special active skill, Overflow. After that warm-up, the old man followed up with a devastating, merciless punch aimed at Tae San. Although he saw it coming, its speed was too great for him to dodge, and he took the full force of it to the face, getting a black eye instantly. Its power was immense, sending Tae San flying back dozens of meters and shattering a large wall. Even the shield he was given was dented. After landing the blow, the old man praised the young man, remarking that he was no ordinary person. Once the dizziness subsided, Tae San couldn't believe his eyes, shattering a maze wall in a single blow. What kind of monstrous power is that? First, the gatekeeper, and now him. Is this place filled with nothing but monsters? Seeing the young man recover quickly, the old man slowly approached to check on him. I must say, I'm surprised. Not only did you manage to block the attack with your shield in time, but you also immediately disengaged from it to reduce the damage. Then he extended his hand and continued. I had no intention of killing someone I'd never met. That's why I didn't use a fatal blow. Besides, even if I had truly wanted to attack, you still had the ability to withstand it. In short, it's not a problem. The way you walked the line between life and death just to survive was quite astounding. That's an incredible skill you have, dodging my attack with such meager stats. As the old man helped him up, Tae San thought, even though he comes off as an arrogant NPC, he really knows a lot about skills. That's right. Even Lishan didn't know about this. After that, the two cheerfully greeted and introduced themselves to each other. After the introductions, Tae San repeatedly questioned the old man. Why did you suddenly attack me? Do you enjoy bullying the weak? The old man replied cheerfully, I've been here so long with no one to play with. When someone finally showed up, I just wanted to have a little fun, that's all. No hard feelings. Do the survivors here have any value? And are they worthy of my recognition? There's no one more troublesome than those who don't understand themselves. However, you passed the evaluation. Well done. Heh. Nodding along as the old man spoke, Tae San thought, worthy of recognition? So that's his standard. At the very least, he won't be my enemy. There are many gods in the maze. Many of them test players and grant them rewards. But most players don't care about them, because the gods only exist in solo mode. Fortunately, Lishan discovered the dark truths about the gods. Thanks to my frequent conversations with her, I learned a lot of information. And cheerfully added, the more people who know about the existence of the gods, the better. The god I used to worship was the god of love, Elbov. We all served him, calling his name every morning and night. He was a kind god who brought together those with love in their hearts. In my world, no deity was as beloved as him, but unfortunately, my world was destroyed, and I am the only one left who remembers him. Then, he invited Tae San to descend into the maze with him for a bit of fun. However, his goal wasn't just to clear the stage, but to explore every nook and cranny and model every nook and cranny of this place to become as strong as possible. Seeing the young man's ambition, the old god clapped his hands and praised him profusely. He even offered to teach our protagonist a few moves. Okay, sweet, getting a free martial arts lesson without any effort. So, Tae San agreed without a moment's hesitation. Before teaching him, the old man apologized to Tae San for attacking him so crudely before. Then, skipping the whole master-disciple ceremony, the old man got straight to the lesson. Among the basic skills, some can be easily learned with a single action. Swordsmanship if you use a sword, shield arts if you use a shield, and spearmanship if you use a spear. You get the basic skill as soon as you equip the weapon. The higher your proficiency, the more fluent your knowledge and skill with that weapon become. So, you could say pretty much every player already has these skills. But there's a skill that combines all of these basic skills. It might not be perfect, but you could call it the best of the best. It's called Irag's Weapon Arts. The goddess herself even praised me for creating it. And that's the skill I'm going to teach you right now. Then, he told Tae San to hit him with the shield. Without hesitating, our boy grabbed the thing at his feet and, with all his might, slammed it right into the old man's head. However, the old man was completely unharmed. The damage dealt was only 4. He then told him to attack with his fists. All right, if you insist. Tae San put all his strength into his fist and punched him square in the gut. However, the damage was only 2, not even a mosquito bite. How pathetic. Through this test, he explained that the better the weapon, the stronger the damage it deals, a basic fact that everyone knows, which made Tae San's face scrunch up. So all that was for nothing? He hadn't learned a single damn thing. The old man then told him that normally, when you combine 2 weapons like gauntlets and a sword, the monster only takes damage from the equipment with the higher damage value. The damage doesn't stack. That's why most warriors choose only a single type of weapon. However, everything changed after I created Irag's weapon arts. It allows all damage from your equipment to stack onto the target. In other words, if you have a sword with plus 20 attack power and a gauntlet with plus 50 attack power, you can deal 70 damage if you land a hit. Furthermore, even unarmed body parts like your elbows and knees can deal damage as usual. Hearing this, Tae San broke into a joyful smile. Doesn't that mean my entire body is a weapon? With this skill, I can use all the equipment that was previously considered useless. It might not seem like much now, but once I clear the labyrinth and get high-tier equipment, this will be the perfect skill. You could even consider it a main skill. The old man added, I know you have patience, but this skill is something that mediocre adventurers could never grasp, even if they trained their whole lives. Do you want to learn it? Then, he slowly placed his hand on Tae San's shoulder, transferred some of his power to him, and continued. Unlike other skills, I created this one myself, so I can easily pass it on. More importantly, since my proficiency is at 100%, you'll receive it without any problems. As he absorbed the power from the old man, the system updated his stats. Basic skill. Shield arts has been combined with Irag's weapon arts. Basic skill. Sword arts has been combined with Irag's weapon arts. You have received a skill from the creator of Irag's weapon arts. Tae San couldn't believe he'd learned so many new moves after just one day in the dungeon. People might even call him a hacker if they found out. After the transfer was complete, the old man reminded Tae San that those techniques were only at the novice level. To master them, he would have to train hard every day to reach 100% proficiency. He even gave him a dinky little ring as a bonus. It gave +1 attack and nothing else. However, something is better than nothing, so Tae San happily accepted the gift and put it on his finger right away. Once that was done, the old man added, I've given you everything I can, but it would be a shame to part ways now. You can't go down to the 3rd floor right away. Anyway, how about a little sparring match to warm up? Let me see if the skills I just gave you have made you any stronger. Okay, perfect. He was just about to go find some rats to test his skills on, but now he could test them on a person. Tae San smiled with delight. Immediately after, he grabbed his shield and prepared for battle. Seeing the kid was ready, the old man dashed forward and threw a full power punch. The resulting shockwave kicked up a cloud of dust that obscured the entire area. After that, the two sparred for another 500 rounds. Since he was still weak, Tae San could only focus on dodging and minimizing any damage he took. The old man was much stronger, throwing punch after punch and kick after kick. However, not wanting to bully his new disciple, he went easy on him, not wanting the kid to get hurt at all. After 1,000 rounds, our hero was finally exhausted and collapsed on the ground. However, the system delivered some good news. Passive skill. Continuous combat proficiency has increased by 3%. Battles can be very long. Thanks to this skill, you will not be easily exhausted. Tae San was thrilled. Thanks to this, I can fight S-rank monsters for several days. I didn't choose solo mode because I used to only be able to get this skill by fighting other players. Seeing his disciple fight so well, the old man praised him profusely. You possess unbelievable senses and skills for a first-floor adventurer. Just as I thought. I wasn't wrong about you. Then, the two of them sat down and talked for a while. The old man informed him that he had now mastered weapon mastery. He could teach it to anyone, but if that person was despicable, he should never teach them. If you violate this, I will find you and kill you with my own hands. The second promise. If you discover anything related to the goddess Lovanov, you must tell me. Hearing those requests, Tae San thought to himself, for me to find the goddess, either Lovanov must not die, or she can only die with me. Unless something drastic happens, Lovanov will probably be killed by someone else before I can find her. Should I tell him? Will telling him change the course of events? Then, Tae San spoke up and asked, Old man, "Do you want to know her location?" The old man was ecstatic. "Of course I do. What a silly question." Seeing this, he immediately said, "I know where she is." This made the old man's eyes widen in disbelief, thinking this kid was just bluffing. He hadn't even cleared the first stage, so how could he possibly know where she was? He had to be bluffing, regardless of whether the old man believed him or not. Using the memory Zeon had told him about, Tae San revealed the goddess's location. She's on the 78th floor, in the Universal Library, in the 24th secret room. Hearing that address, the old man was startled. For 1,000 years, he had never even thought about that room. What a monumental oversight. He was as happy as if he'd struck gold, grabbing Tae San in a hug and thanking him profusely. Although he now knew the location, it was deep inside the dungeon, so getting there would require meticulous preparation. Then, not knowing how to repay the young man, he racked his brain before taking out another ring to thank him. The Ring of Bloody Twilight, +20. It looked like a ring belonging to the priests of some cult. Currently, it was the only one in existence on easy mode. To obtain this item, one would need to clear at least 30 floors. It was truly a valuable item. After giving the gift, he bid farewell to his disciple and joyfully went off to find the love of his life. He's gone, so I should get going too. To make sure he didn't miss any items in the dungeon, Tae San swept through the first floor dungeon a few more times to check and to grind for levels. By now, the giant rats were no match for his current strength. However, that was also a downside, as he would no longer receive item drops from such low-level monsters. It was a bit disappointing. Realizing he couldn't gain anything more here, Tae San decided to head to the second floor. However, before ascending, he went to a place called a secret room. Each floor has at least one secret room, where a great reward awaits players who can discover it. Magic staves, mystic rings, elixirs that permanently increase stats items that significantly aid in the mission to conquer the labyrinth. In short, finding them depends more on luck and experience than on skill. Although the labyrinth map is different for each difficulty level, it shares a basic architecture, so the secret rooms also have similar characteristics. There is only a single entrance, and inside is a completely empty room, a room that most players ignore, thinking it's useless. Secret rooms are often found in such places. If the bricks don't show any particular changes, there's a high chance you can find it by knocking on them. In other words, he had to grind it out the old-fashioned way, and so Tae San began prying at each brick to see if there was a mechanism. One brick after another, from the floor to the walls, Tae San finally found the trigger. The secret room immediately appeared before his eyes. Inside, it held a very mysterious treasure. However, fearing there might be a trap inside, the young man ran out, caught a giant rat, and threw it inside to scout the situation. Just as he predicted, a trap was activated. The rat was smoked out and then hit with a poison-tipped arrow, dying instantly. Knowing this was only the first stage and that his skills were already on a completely different level compared to other ordinary players, Tae San confidently leaped inside to test his current abilities. He then deliberately stepped on the bricks that triggered the traps. Poison arrows shot out continuously, but they were a bit too slow and were easily caught by our protagonist. With only a few steps left to the treasure chest, Tae San kept stomping on the triggers to test his own reflexes. Although the arrows were coming out in greater numbers, they didn't leave even a single scratch on him. However, the number and speed of the poison arrows increased the further he went, becoming faster and more numerous, until Tae San couldn't keep up and was finally hit. The system continuously sent red alerts. Your health is dropping rapidly. Bandage your wounds immediately. Knowing he'd be dead if he didn't treat his wound quickly, even though he was just a few steps away from the treasure, Tae San forced himself to sit down and bandage his wound. Glancing around, he saw a lever in a corner and knew it had to be the safety switch. Tae San walked over and pulled it. As expected, all the traps were deactivated. Our protagonist slowly opened the chest to see what kind of goodies were inside. What caught his eye was a high-grade staff, but it didn't look very powerful at all. Holding it in his hand, the system identified it as the Flame Staff, a staff used by apprentice mages. It could cast the basic magic, Fireball. The Flame Staff was much more valuable than other magic tools. This was an intermediate grade item. Because he was in single-player mode, Tae San couldn't solve many of the secret rooms, so he had no reference points. If that was the case, things might get easier from now on. After storing his items in the system, Tae San slowly stepped outside. The rats, smelling blood, immediately rushed in to attack him. However, the difference in their levels was now too vast. Even though he was injured, Tae San could still easily take them down with a kick. Then, he made his way back to the Fountain of Life to fully restore the HP he had lost, preparing for the upcoming exploration of the second floor. After checking all the items he had found on the exgressor first floor, Tae San was very satisfied with everything, especially the divine staff. The structure of the labyrinth was very simple. Each floor had a staircase leading to the next, guarded by a boss. Players just needed to defeat the boss and move on. It would be great if he could easily defeat the boss with this simple structure, but if that were the case, it wouldn't be called single-player mode. After opening the door to another room, a cold, dark place housing the first floor boss, Tae San was extremely delighted to see that it still looked very plump and healthy, despite not having eaten a damn thing. It used to be the 10th floor boss in easy mode. Countless players had been torn to shreds by its fangs and claws. But with all his prior experience, it was nothing more than a small fry. Come to think of it, his sister Zeon took down this massive boss by incinerating it with fire, due to the Ada Rat King's trait of never leaving its room. So that was a good strategy to learn from, but it wasn't the kind of fight the labyrinth expected. Holding the magic staff in his hand, Tae San channeled his mana, creating a hellfire that shot straight towards the beast. It was because he wanted to become stronger that he chose to confront it head-on like this. After getting bored of just burning it, Tae San used the bow the shopkeeper gave him to test a few shots. After a rain of poison-laced arrows, the boss fell into a paralyzed state for 10 seconds. How obedient. A living punching bag to practice on. Tae San pulled out his shield to deal some damage. When its health dropped to 20%, he knew it would enter a berserk state. Tae San grew even more excited, because now, he finally had a chance to unleash his full power. As expected, it was no pushover. Just a few seconds after going berserk, it already percent dasis, landed a blow that made him cough up blood. With his current strength, he couldn't withstand it. His strength stat was only 11. To whittle down its health, he had to use a strategy based on his strongest stat, agility, so he stopped trading blows with it. Tae San adopted a hit-and-run tactic to minimize his injuries as much as possible. Seeing that the shield wasn't dealing much damage, he unsheathed the wind-ripping sword and slashed at it thousands of times. However, it wasn't very effective either, because his base stats were still a bit low. For every 7 damage he dealt, it slapped him for a good 24 HP. Realizing that trading blows was a losing battle, and that his health would drop uncontrollably, Tae San started dodging instead of blocking to mitigate as much damage as possible. After a period of probing and hit-and-run tactics, the first floor boss was finally defeated. The moment it was eliminated, he leveled up, and his HP and mana were fully restored, much to Tae San's excitement. In addition, a special system notification appeared. You have defeated the first floor boss. Basic. Reward. You have received a random stat elixir. You have comprehended the hidden elements of the first floor. Secret. Reward. Designated stat elixir. Sitting on the corpse of the giant rat, Tae San chugged all the potions he had, received to further increase his stats. Haha, what a sweet deal. From this, he reached level 4, and all his stats had increased, slightly. However, for the very first stage, this was already fantastic. Tae San smiled, pleased with what he had achieved. He then lay down to rest for a bit, wondering how far everyone else had gotten in the dungeon. Then, so that more people could clear the dungeon, Tae San posted a guide on how to clear the stage. Whether they could pass or not would depend on their own abilities. Thanks to Tae San's detailed guidance, countless people cleared the REGRESSED first stage, thanking him profusely. He recalled that in his past life, there was hardly any positive information like this. It was mostly people lamenting their fate and crying out for help in desperation. Later, as the death toll rose, no one sent any more messages, except for Ton. After feeling recovered, Tae San was about to head down to the second floor, but his pockets were jingling with money, so he ran to the general store to see if there was anything good to buy. After weighing his options, he decided to buy a shabby-looking glove. With so many swords and blades available, he bought this piece of junk, leaving the shopkeeper a bit puzzled as to what the hell Tae San was going to do with it, but he sold it to him anyway. With his shopping done, he continued his journey. According to his sister Zeon, there was a mysterious blacksmith in the dungeon named Hafan. No matter how expensive the weapons in the shop were, compared to what he created, they were nothing more than scrap metal. According to his sister's story, the blacksmith was located deeper than the labyrinth's entrance, a place where even creatures that should die from a simple stab wound could still survive. The monsters here weren't too formidable. After walking for what felt like forever, Tae San finally arrived. The system immediately displayed a notification. Second floor quest. Begin. Defeat the boss of the second floor and proceed. Reward. Elixir of mana enhancement for beginners, and a secret reward. Seeing such a tempting reward on just the second floor, our protagonist was beyond excited. He then opened the chat channel to check on everyone. To his surprise, every single person was waiting for him. Dudes were blowing up his video call to get the scoop. Just like that, bam, he'd become a star. Tae San broke out in a cold sweat, not knowing how to handle the situation, so he just randomly picked one person to talk to. The communication system here was truly next level. Even though they were in different places, it felt like they were standing in the same spot. The lucky guy this time was Hoon. The moment Tae San accepted the call, he immediately jumped in. You'd think he'd be asking how to clear the floor. But as it turns out, Tae San had been radio silent for so long that the entire server was in a panic, wondering if he was even still alive. So everyone was frantically calling just to check on him. After a moment, the young man started to vent. If we don't enter the labyrinth, we can't find any food. No one from inside the labyrinth is answering us, and we're getting hungrier by the day. They say when you're starving, you start eating your own limbs, you know? And with no one to talk to, it's horrifying enough to drive a man insane. I thought I would just run through the labyrinth as fast as I could and eat whatever I found, but in that critical situation, maybe it was just a small post to you. But for us, it was incredibly important. Tun was the first to succeed, and the rest of us followed his example. Listening to the young man's story, Tae San wondered about Tun, but this was the first time he'd ever spoken to this guy. In my past life, he probably fought recklessly and died after defeating the giant rats. He must be as talented as Tun. You could say he's no ordinary person to have survived thanks to my guide. Soon, you'll encounter a strange, old NPC who is searching for a god. He'll attack you out of nowhere. If you react appropriately, you'll be able to get many useful things from him. He treats players based on their attitude. And with that, tired from all the talking, Tae San said his goodbyes and continued his journey. The first floor's solo mode was really just a game tutorial. They say the second floor is where the real game begins. After wandering around for a bit, Tae San sniffed out a group of monsters hiding in a dark room. Instead of hiding and avoiding them like in his past life, this time, Tae San went full beast mode, kicking the door in and charging into their midst without a shred of fear. Ambushed in their own lair by a player, the monsters panicked. Are you the monster, or are we? What a reckless madman. Seeing the easy prey right in front of him, Tae San confidently raised his bow, ready to make short work of them. The small-brained monsters didn't realize Death himself was standing before them, and charged aggressively without a second thought. Tae San raised his bow and sent one to meet its ancestors. The remaining monsters, despite being hit by arrows, still charged recklessly towards Tae San, but he wasn't afraid of close-quarters combat either. As soon as they got near, our hero put away his bow and pulled a shabby shield from his inventory to take them on. Thanks to the many powerful techniques a master had taught him, he easily gave them a proper beatdown, knocking them flat on the floor with a single punch each. It roared in pain, and the nearby golems heard the commotion and came running to see what was happening. Seeing their comrades getting smashed, the brainless monsters didn't care how strong their opponent was and still charged recklessly at our protagonist. When he saw the brilliant light of a sword drop, it was like a divine revelation for Tae San. He knew this was a pretty sweet weapon. Our protagonist was giddy. Hehe, a new toy for me. Then, not wanting to waste any more time, he pulled from his inventory a magic staff and unleashed hellfire on them. The extremely powerful skill made the whole room explode, filling it with thick smoke and dust. With the job done, Tae San finally got what he came for. The system informed him it was a rusted sword with attack power +2. It would be useful in some way. Even though they were just a few basic items, it was enough to make him incredibly excited, admiring his loot with great satisfaction. Then, Tae San continued his journey. After walking for a while, he arrived at a dark and eerie-looking room. The system announced that this was the altar of Rakiatas, granting a first discovery reward. Intelligence permanently increased by 1, mana permanently increased by 2. The gods in this labyrinth are very diverse. Some are friendly, others are hostile. And there are even gods who like to tease or grow fond of players. However, most deities just see humans as a form of entertainment, and this was the altar of Rakiatas, the god of conflict and death. Above the doorway emanated a dark and immense power, greater than anything he'd ever felt. As he approached the altar, the system announced the activation of a side quest. Rakiatas wishes to test you. You have come to the shrine. If you agree, you will be tested. Succeed, and you will receive a reward. The reward will be determined by Rakiatas. after evaluating your performance. What's there to be afraid of? With all the recklessness of a 20-year-old, Tae San happily accepted the challenge right away. As soon as he accepted, a figure slowly materialized from the void. First its limbs, then a full body clad in steel armor from head to toe. Seeing how beefy and heavily armored it was, even Tae San felt a little intimidated and hesitated to make a move. If you won't move, then I will. Seeing him standing still in a corner, the boss dashed in and slashed mercilessly. Although he used his shield to block, it was an armor-piercing attack, so Tae San still took 25 damage. Knowing the shield was useless, he immediately tossed it aside and pulled another longsword from his system. He was ready for a deathmatch, right here and now, and wasn't about to wait for it to make the first move. Dual-wielding his swords, Tae San charged in aggressively. Despite using 77 different techniques to attack, it was probably because the boss was on a completely different level that it didn't even bother to move, effortlessly blocking all of his attacks. Realizing this enemy was a bit too tough for him to handle, Tae San's face paled, unsure of what to do next. After trading blows for a while to no avail, Tae San jumped back to consider a more viable plan. Then, pretending to be defeated, he took off running. Just as the boss was right on his tail, Tae San suddenly spun around, using his incredible speed to lunge forward and stab it. Because the attack was so fast, the monster couldn't react in time and took the full force of the stab to its side. However, the sword got stuck in its armor, and Tae San couldn't pull it out. He remembered his master's words. The Ira weapon art could stack damage. So, all he needed to do was get in close and prevent it from using its power easily. He had used this method many times before. Looks like it'll work this time too. Then, after landing the stab, Tae San retreated to assess the situation and prepare for his upcoming counterattack. Pissed off by the sneak attack, the boss furiously, yet effortlessly, pulled the sword from its own body. Then, it casually tossed it towards Tae San. Thanks to his quick reflexes, he easily caught it. Before he knew what to do next, it lunged forward, pinning Tae San against the wall. Because the power gap was just too immense, even though he clenched every muscle in his body to resist, he still took an insane amount of damage from it. When he could no longer hold on, Tae San was sent flying backwards, his back slamming painfully against the wall. Although he was exhausted, but if he didn't get up now, it would be game over. So Tae San used every last ounce of his strength to stand up. His hands were also trembling so badly that he couldn't even grip his sword tightly anymore. The boss didn't let up, it just kept slowly advancing towards him. Pushed into a corner, having survived countless life or death situations, Tae San faced death itself. Without a hint of fear, glaring defiantly as if to provoke the boss. "Come and get me, you little punk." Then, to make its dinner a bit more spectacular, Tae San pulled a magic staff from his system and used fire to light up the dark room. When the fireball approached, the boss seemed slightly surprised, but it simply sliced the fireball in two with a single slash. Right after attacking, it froze, realizing Tae San was gone. It turned out that, seizing the opportunity while its guard was down, he had already zipped behind it, swinging his sword for a powerful strike. Although the slash was incredibly powerful, against the monster's ridiculously sturdy armor, he didn't even leave a scratch. The monster immediately countered, but since he had activated a skill to deflect his opponent's attacks, Tae San confidently met the blow head-on, and so, the two of them clashed for another 500 rounds. Although the old man had taught him many techniques, they were all still at a basic, elementary level, so Tae San struggled immensely to deal with it. After getting tired of dealing physical damage with his sword, he'd pull out his staff to dish out some magic damage. Despite inflicting a lot of damage, it still wasn't enough. The boss was still standing strong, while Tae San was completely exhausted. 5 mana, 70 health. Basically, he was on the verge of death. After a frantic second of thought, figuring he was going to die anyway, Tae San charged recklessly at the monster one last time to see if he could salvage anything, and just as he'd expected, before his two swords could even reach their target, he was impaled straight through the chest. You'd think it would end here, but nope. The young man activated Endurance, nullifying the attack and reducing all incoming damage to 0 for 1 second. Using every last ounce of his strength, Tae San plunged the two swords in his hands deep into the boss. He was hoping to turn the tables, but after stabbing his swords deep into the boss's neck and seeing it was still alive and kicking, Tae San decided to end its sorrow by sending its head and body in different directions. Once it was over, he jumped to the ground and checked himself to see if he had any new holes. The severed head, as if possessed, praised Tae San for fighting well, calling him a truly brave young man. Then, the system announced, "You have defeated the Servant of Rock Ratas." Only then did Tae San finally breathe a sigh of relief and collapse on the ground to rest. Before he could even catch his breath, a series of notifications popped up from the system. You have defeated the servant of REGRESSED. You have received a large amount of experience. You will level up. You have evolved into your optimal form. You have single-handedly defeated a powerful opponent. Activating spiritual enhancement. Wanting to see just how strong he'd become, Tae San once again clenched everything he had to pull up his status window. His level had reached 6, and his basic stats had also increased. While it wasn't a giant leap to godhood, it was more than enough to make him ecstatic. He then asked the system if he got any good loot from the boss fight. It informed him, "You have received the reward. Ceremonial Sword of REGRESSED." Just then, the system updated the sword. The sword informed Tae San that this was a blade used by the worshippers of REGRESSED, its edge stained red by the blood of sacrificial offerings. Holding such a sweet item in his hands, Tae San couldn't believe the reward for defeating the second-floor boss was already this good. He couldn't imagine what the next floors would be like. It was so exciting. Besides the item he was holding, he also received a passive skill, Proof of Effort, Mastery, 1%. You have proven your fighting spirit. It grants you a boost in battles against your enemies. But before he could even figure out how good it was, the ground suddenly began to shake violently, leaving him completely bewildered, wondering what the hell was going on now. He had just beaten the boss, for crying out loud. Then, a red notification appeared. REGRESSED offers you an apostle's contract. Accept or decline. Faced with a difficult choice, Tae San didn't know what to do and plopped down on the ground to think for a bit. He recalled that it seemed even gods would be penalized if they tried to influence players. REGRESSED wanted to make him an apostle, even if it meant facing a penalty. But although it was proposed as something beneficial, the one holding the contract was still a god. He had always arbitrarily made the trials more difficult and behaved erratically. Would it really be beneficial for him to accept an offer from someone like that? Even if his intentions were good, he might have to live his entire life as a puppet or a slave. After some contemplation, Tae San finally decided to refuse. However, another notification popped up, making him break out in a cold sweat. Side quest initiated. REGRESSED acknowledges your outstanding performance in the last trial. He wishes to test you once more. Condition: kill enemies on the second and third floors, then return. Reward: REGRESSED will decide based on your performance. He was about to refuse when the system tempted him again. The reward you receive will be determined by your performance. Greedy for good. Loot. Tae San decided to accept the quest right away, regardless of how difficult it might be. Then, after a long and diligent period of farming, he decided to visit the weapon shop owner to buy some supplies. Seeing the young man was still safe and sound, the owner was overjoyed and asked what he wanted to buy so he could give him a discount. Without hesitation, Tae San asked to buy all types of elixirs to prepare for the upcoming quest. The shop owner happily got the items for him. Noticing the fancy weapon at his hip, he asked, "Did you get that from that freak, REGRESSED? He seems to be obsessed with you, since he loves to fight so much." Seeing that the old man knew everything, Tae San was completely surprised and praised him for being so omniscient. The shop owner smugly added, "What the hell happens here that I don't know about? You can't imagine how many talented people have died because of his insane habits, that tendency of his to just expand into other people's territory." Tae San asked about the contract, wanting the old man's guidance, but that would be spoiling the game, and who would do that? So, he refused to tell him, adding, "All I can do to help you is fulfill my duty as a shop owner. I can't do anything more. That's the law of the contract. It's also why I'm forever imprisoned here and can't go anywhere, all because of that damn contract." Knowing he couldn't get any more information, Tae San prepared his gear, bid the man farewell, and continued on his journey. After walking for a while, wanting to know how far everyone else had progressed in the dungeon, Tae San opened the system to catch up. As if they had been waiting for him, the moment they saw him online, the girl, Zeon, and the young man he had spoken to before immediately ran over to chat. Even though it was just a virtual reality space, everything felt incredibly real. The two told him they had followed his instructions, but the results were strange. The old man just spat in my face and walked away. I tried, but my body wouldn't move. I was completely overwhelmed, and it all ended pretty badly. Zeon also shook her head in dismay. I met him too, but the outcome was the same as his. I managed to move, but it was no good. Seeing that they couldn't even manage that with his guidance, Tae San pondered with a headache. It seemed only those who could react to the attack were considered worthy and treated with decency. Turns out, the two old men and Ratas actually had the same taste. Tae San then asked the two what they were up to and learned they were just exploring and killing rats to level up. Knowing that killing those small fries would take forever to level up, our protagonist offered a small tip. There's a boss on the second floor. It's called the Giant Rat, an upgraded version of the large rat. Its physical strength is Trekta's boat, over 2,000. Even if you block its attack, you'll still take damage, so be careful. The two of them wanted to be spoon-fed the answer and asked Tessin how to deal with it. However, that would just ruin the game, so he only encouraged them to do their best. Knowing they wouldn't get anything more out of him, the two cheerfully went back to face the monster on their own. And so, the three of them said their goodbyes. With his new toy in hand, Tae San was so confident he could take on the entire server that he shouted wherever he went, trying to provoke as many monsters as possible. After stirring things up a bit, goblins poured out from every nook and cranny of the forest and attacked him in unison. These monsters were of all different types. Some used swords, some used bows, and others held spears. Basically, they had everything except for a brain. Knowing these small fry were no match for him now, Tae San unsheathed his sword to test out his new skill and see how good it was. The result was truly surprising. With just a single basic sword stroke, he sent countless monsters to the afterlife. Even his reaction speed was incredible now. He could block their attacks without even looking. And so, with absolutely overwhelming power, Tae San took down all the monsters there without breaking a sweat. After dealing with the minions, he glanced around to see if there was any good loot. While scanning the area, a very strange door caught Tae San's eye. He was quite surprised since he had never heard of it before. Driven by his curiosity, Tae San slowly opened the door and stepped inside. However, all that was inside was a large stone tablet. The system informed him this was the warrior's grave. For a first discovery, wisdom permanently increases by 1, and mana permanently increases by 2. He then slowly approached it to see if he could find anything good. But suddenly, as soon as his hand touched the stone tablet, a cute little spirit appeared and greeted him cheerfully. However, right after saying hello, it disappeared, leaving Tae San with no freaking clue what was going on, a giant question mark hovering over his head. He then placed his hand on the gravestone one more time. It appeared again, said hello, and vanished, which really started to tick Tae San off. Is this punk trying to mess with me? So, on the third try, the moment it popped its head out, Tae San quickly snatched it. He frowned angrily. Damn it, are you trying to mess with me, you little brat? The spirit then flew high up before turning back to say, I am a ghost, one who has already died. I am bound here to give you a quest. However, I cannot give this quest to the weak. Hearing this, Tae San mocked. Oh yeah, how strong were you to end up kicking the bucket on the second floor? The ghost got offended and continued, you know nothing. It's all this damn labyrinth's fault. I should have been on a deeper floor. I don't even know why I'm trapped here. Getting back to the point, if you want to receive the quest, at least come back after you've cleared the 30th floor, kid. Sure, pal. A guy who died on the second floor was telling him to clear the 30th floor just to come back. Tae San turned and left, without a second glance. As he walked away, he mumbled, what a useless, delusional NPC. But after seeing Tae San walk away, the spirit spotted his high-quality sword. It immediately rushed to block his path and asked, doesn't that belong to Rakata? How did you get it? Tae San reminded him simply, I cleared the trial to get it. Duh. You think I bought it from the store or something? Realizing Tae San was no ordinary player, the spirit changed its tone, wanting to give him the quest without the usual requirement of clearing floor 30. Flying around him, it flattered, you should have said so sooner. You are completely worthy of this quest. Come, let me explain. I was once a great warrior who reached the deepest floor before any other player, and I was on the verge of conquering this labyrinth. However, after clearing the deepest floor, I met a formidable opponent. I was forced to temporarily retreat to the 10th floor to rest. Even with little health left, the low-level monsters certainly couldn't penetrate my defenses. So, I went to sleep with peace of mind. But the boss of the 10th floor, I don't know where he got it, but he found a weapon that dealt fixed damage and used it to kill me in my sleep. I, who was about to conquer the deepest part of the labyrinth, was killed by a scumbag like that. So, I will give you this quest. Kill the boss of the 10th floor, and I will reward you. As it finished speaking, a system notification popped up. Subquest initiated. The warrior resting in the labyrinth wants you to avenge him. Condition: kill the boss of the 10th floor. Reward: to be determined based on the warrior's mood. Seeing the somewhat vague reward, Tae San broke out in a cold sweat, thinking, If he's heartbroken and decides not to give out a prize, then I'm just out of luck, right? That can't be it. But since he was planning to eliminate all the dungeon bosses anyway, he agreed on the spot. Seeing this, the little spirit was overjoyed and flew over to sit on Tae San's head. It wanted to accompany him for a while, since it had been here for so long and was getting bored. Now with a new tail following him around, our main character was just annoyed. He didn't even want to talk. With this thing sticking to him, how was he supposed to practice his one-handed sword skills at night? It was incredibly frustrating. As it flew along, the ghost chattered on with great enthusiasm. This gave Tae San a massive headache. He wished he could just shut it up with a single slash of his sword. Realizing this guy was a chatterbox, an idea popped into Tae San's head. He decided to ask the spirit a few things to see if he could get any useful information. Having not spoken to anyone in a long time, the guy didn't hold anything back and spilled everything to Tae San. I was once a member of the Vest royal family. I was the eldest son and was soon to inherit the kingdom. I was also exceptional. When it came to swordsmanship and wisdom, no one in the kingdom could compare. To me, whenever there was a ball, all the princesses would flock to me. Ah, those were the glorious days. Heh. But then, I died in my sleep. What a lame death. I failed. I couldn't save the world. That one mistake ruined everything. I have to kill the one who killed me, chop him into 1,000 pieces to quell my rage. Ignoring the ghost's rambling, Tae San continued to explore all the rooms on the second floor of the dungeon. As he opened the door to a dark room, Tae San noticed. Inside, a bunch of goblins were sitting around, hiding from the sun. Without a moment's hesitation at the sight of monsters, he immediately drew his bow and shot straight at them. After getting hit by the arrow and convulsing, the entire green-skinned horde drew their swords and charged forward, intending to finish them all in one go. But that would mean having to listen to that guy's nagging, which was even more boring. After a few seconds of hesitation, he drew his bow again to paralyze them. Seeing the young man wasting time with these antics, the ghost flew around him in a huff, throwing a tantrum. Knowing he could only gain more skills by attacking goblins, Tae San wanted to make a bet with the ghost to see what would happen. He was confident, having already cleared 85 floors, so the ghost confidently bet that he wouldn't get a thing, and then agreed. If Tae San acquired a new skill, the ghost would do everything he asked. Just like that, the ghost was already feeling smug, wondering what he should order Tae San to do. After grabbing a goblin by the neck for a moment, a system notification began to appear. You have continuously fought a single enemy while dealing with many others. You have received a special active skill, Forced Duel. Whether it's damage over time, poison, stuns, or intimidation, this core skill can negate all adverse effects. Realizing he had lost, the spirit's face twisted, completely speechless. After a moment, it finally spoke. Fine. Unlike the others, my storyline has no limits. You want the silent treatment? Hey, don't think you're all that just because you got a skill. Don't be so arrogant. However, a promise is a promise, so the ghost had to spill everything. Although Forced Duel is a cool skill, there are plenty of other skills in this labyrinth. Do you know Leap? Tae San didn't even bother to listen and continued. Not only do I know Leap, I even know Super Leap. This made the ghost's face twist in disbelief. He had to admit, Tae San knew a lot. However, that's not all. What's important is how you survive and what you discover. While listening to the ghost's monologue, Tae San went around tapping on each brick, checking for a mechanism. After a long search, he finally found it. When he lightly touched the switch, it suddenly lit up. Without a second thought, Tae San pushed it in and entered the secret chamber. Countless traps were set up in here, waiting for anyone who dared to trespass. However, the greater the difficulty, the better the loot. Tae San observed for a moment, then took a running start and dashed past the spike pit with incredible ease. The ghost's jaw dropped, seeing how fast he was. This guy has only been down here for 2 days. Does he have to be this OP? Are you hacking the game? Then, to save time, Tae San dashed to the trap switch. He disabled all of them. Seeing him handle everything so smoothly, the ghost didn't dare utter a single word of criticism. Then, the treasure chest opened, containing a small item inside. The system announced that it was the Mana Spring Seal Ring, +5. Inside the ring was a spring, which emanated a gentle, fragrant scent. After acquiring another useful item, Tae San opened the chat channel to see how everyone was progressing in the catacombs. It seemed everyone had their own struggles. Before this, they all had different jobs with 0 combat skills, and now they had to fight like actual warriors. It was too difficult to overcome. Only the younger players were still trying their best to explore and discover things. Then, to give everyone more motivation to conquer the dungeon. Tae San entered the live chat room to guide everyone. When they saw him appear, they were all overjoyed and welcomed him with great enthusiasm. They wondered why Tae San, who was always in the solo chat, had suddenly come to the community chat room. Then, standing before everyone present in the general chat room, Tae San began to speak. The reason I came here today is to teach solo players about skills. Skills aren't the final destination. They are the means to venture deeper into the labyrinth. If I had said this sooner, it wouldn't have gone according to plan. First, I want to teach you the simplest skill, which is pain reduction. Remember to stab your own arm with a sword. Remember to stab it all the way to the hilt, you guys. You have to stab it deep into your forearm, all the way to the bone, for it to work. So don't be too scared and mess it up. If you use that skill to fight a giant rat, you can obtain a new skill called Iron Will. It will help you fight regardless of the damage you take, so you have to fight it. The next skill is called breath holding. You can obtain that skill if you dive into the spring of life and hold your breath until you're on the verge of death. And if you swing your sword to your absolute limit while using that skill, you will acquire the suffocation skill. Next is the endurance skill, which allows you to resist fatal damage. You only need 1 point in stamina, and you have to withstand 30 attacks from the giant rat. It's all or nothing. After hearing this, everyone's faces went blank. Dying over and over again, like that, is no different from self-torture. Boo-hoo. Seeing that everyone was scared, Tae San added, I have no intention of forcing you to do this. I have no reason to do so, so the decision is still up to you, he said, thinking to himself. Though, their reaction is understandable. These are people who are used to modern life. To them, war is just a part of history, and famine is just a problem in faraway countries. They are people who have never risked their lives for anything in their entire lives. So even after entering the labyrinth, old habits die hard. All right then, seeing that he looked upset, only his sister Xian and Hook approached to check on him. The two of them agreed to do everything that Tae San instructed, despite the others trying their best to stop them, saying it was a stupid move. Seeing that someone was finally listening to him, Tae San gave one more suggestion. As long as you surface the moment the system window pops up, you'll be fine. But when you're about to run out of air, you'll want to come up immediately. So it's going to be a little tricky. Then, getting a headache from all the talk, our protagonist left the general chat room, vowing to never talk to those stubborn fools again. It was exhausting. And so, he returned to his dungeon, accompanied by that ghost. After traveling for a while, they finally reached the boss room. Without a hint of fear, Tae San slowly stepped inside to take a look. The moment he saw it, the system announced, a goblin with a chisel has appeared. Seeing an intruder in its territory, it immediately summoned its minions to greet him. But since it was just a small fry monster, despite acting tough, it only took one hit to send it to the afterlife. Seeing him strike like that, the ghost advised, you seem a bit battle-crazed, don't you? I don't think you understand their tactics at all. You should have gone for that bastard first. Didn't you even glance over and see what trick it was pulling? Ignoring the ghost's rambling, Tae San recklessly charged toward the leader. Just a few steps in, his mind suddenly went blank. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in another dimension, with countless monster corpses scattered beneath his feet. Seeing a person appear, they started crawling over and grabbing him. In that moment, he even caught a glimpse of Xian. She relentlessly blamed Tae San for abandoning everyone, then broke down sobbing. However, knowing this was a dirty trick by that goblin, Tae San remained completely calm, vowing that once he escaped the illusion, he would send it to meet its maker, instantly. Outside the hypnotic spell, the warrior ghost sneered, well, serves you right for not listening. Stubbornness only gets you a beating. Then, seeing Tae San sitting motionless, the boss charged to finish him off. However, just as it was a few steps away, Tae San snapped out of it, taking down the ugly goblin with a single slash. Seeing it was still struggling, Tae San approached slowly, without a trace of fear. He lifted it up with absolute ease. The system continuously announced, you have experienced spiritual magic multiple times. You have acquired special skills. They will always be active. Spiritual skill, resistance, magic resistance. Having gotten what he needed, Tae San gently sent it on its way. The ghost broke out in a cold sweat, thinking to himself, he managed to withstand a mind control skill. With just a basic spiritual resistance skill, even I couldn't do that. I was planning to feed him enemy info to manipulate his movements, but it turns out, this bastard is even crazier than I imagined. Who the hell is he? And so, after finishing off the second floor boss, Tae San obtained a beginner's lockpicking set and a few stat-boosting potions. Without caring what they boosted, Tae San chugged them all down. If it didn't help one thing, it'd help another. Hee. Then, once again, before heading to the next floor, Tae San dropped by the general store to see if he could buy anything good. The moment he saw the old man, the ghost flew over and started taunting him. "You're that washed-up old geezer, aren't you? How are you so hard to kill? Still not dead yet? Huh?" Then the two of them squared up, as if a great war was about to break out. Seeing this was a waste of time, Tae San stood back and pulled countless junk weapons from his inventory that he'd picked up while fighting monsters, saying he wanted to sell them to see if he could buy anything useful. Seeing the young man had collected so many items, even though none of them were useful, the shopkeeper agreed to buy them because he liked him, and then sold him some other useful items. Although the stats weren't high, for the first few floors, they were more than good enough. Then, after the transaction was complete, Tae San continued his journey. As they walked, he asked the ghost why he had flipped out on that old man. The ghost told him, "Be careful of that guy. He only treats others well for his own benefit. He could change at any moment, so you can't trust him. He's just a slave who once surrendered. He is an enemy to people like you and me. Remember that." Just as their conversation was getting interesting, a few small monsters rushed out to block their path. Annoyed, Tae San kicked each one, splatting them against the corner of the wall. The ghost had to cry out. Was it really necessary to be so brutal? Even though the second floor boss was clearly defeated, the ghost was still puzzled to see Tae San running around killing small fry monsters. He explained that he'd received a subquest from Rakata's that required him to wipe out every single monster on the second and third floors, so he told him to just be patient. After killing another group of minions, Tae San sat down to rest. The ghost, never running out of things to say, began to speak. The gods are responsible for their corresponding domains. There's a god in charge of victory, and another in charge of defeat. But there are also gods who oversee 2 or more domains, like Rakata, who is in charge of conflict and death. The ideological gods are responsible for ideology. The gods of faith are formed from belief, and thus, there are countless gods. They are the designers of the labyrinth. Do you remember that system window you saw when you first came in here? A long, long time ago, this place was a labyrinth created by an extraordinary mage. Rumor has it that he would grant a wish to anyone who could conquer it. It would have been incredibly difficult for a single mage to create this labyrinth alone, so he went to the transcendent beings and shared his plan. He told them he wanted to create a grand labyrinth, a tower that descended deep into the earth. He asked them if they'd like to see countless knights and heroes trying to conquer this place, risking their lives in battle, and all the meaningless deaths they would have to endure. They went absolutely crazy for the idea, and so they gave the mage their full support. That's how they've spent all this time planning this place. The labyrinth. The labyrinth that the gods created together was finally complete. That place deep below is the very foundation of all this. Those who enter the labyrinth will be judged through trials. Their interests and their worth will be evaluated. The gods will offer contracts to the ones they favor most, something called an apostle's contract. If someone becomes an apostle, they'll receive various skills depending on how much the gods like them. They'll also help that person get much better rewards than before. The downside is, your soul will belong to that god, which means the other gods will not like you. There are countless gods in the labyrinth, and each one has different desires. Take Rakratos, for example. He's a god with tons of enemies. A lot of the other gods hate his guts because they see him as a threat. I would certainly be the one in a lot of trouble if I went down there. And there's one more thing. In exchange for the power you receive, you must obey that god's end of the bargain. Whatever the command is, you must follow it. This is all so damn confusing, Tae San thought. I guess I can forget about ever accepting an apostle's contract. Besides, he said that whoever conquers the labyrinth gets a wish. Conquer probably means completing all the quests, right? But I've never heard about Lytian's wish coming true. Could that Ouroboros ring have been her wish? But the Lydian I knew, she would have wished for something else instead of turning back time. There are too many strange things right from the start. After putting together the ghost's whole story, it seems like adventurers chose to challenge the labyrinth, to make their wishes come true. But what about the people from Earth? There's still so much that's unclear. Thinking too much is giving me a headache. Tae San stood up to continue his journey. The ghost encouraged him, just wipe out all the monsters, and let's head down to the next floor. So then, with the new lockpicking kit in hand, instead of just barging through traps like he always did, Now, every time Tae San saw a trap, he'd get curious and sit down to try and disarm it. Sometimes it only took him 1 or 2 tries. However, there were some that he couldn't open even after 100 tries, which made the ghost following him furious, though there was nothing it could do. It could only scream, "You can find out everything about a room at once with your exploration skill. So why are you wasting time using unnecessary skills? What exactly are you trying to do? It's not like there's any significant change. Even if you do increase that skill's proficiency, you could just walk through this room with your own body, couldn't you? Just like you did before." Ignoring the old ghost's nagging, Tae San kept focusing on the trap. After a while of struggling, his lockpicking skill proficiency finally went up, 7%. He was overjoyed. After clearing out all the monsters and looting everything on the 3rd floor, Tae San casually strolled towards the boss room to face it. As the monster appeared, the system notifications popped up continuously. Goblin Chieftain has appeared. Without a hint of fear, Tae San charged head-on into the horde of monsters as if it were nothing. Since he was equipped with some pretty sweet gear, our boy easily wiped the floor with them. Just a few basic moves were enough to take care of the minions. Only the chieftain was left. Even though it was 3 times the size of a normal person, our hero still charged in aggressively. He managed to land a hit, but it barely even scratched the thing. The boss swung its mace right at his face. You'd think it was an instant KO. But no. Everything was like a slow-motion movie in front of Tae San's eyes. When the mace was just a millimeter away from his face, Tae San leaped into the air, much to the monster's astonishment. Before it could even figure out who it was up against, Tae San used his incredible speed to deliver thousands of love taps with his blade. Seeing him act so ruthlessly, the witnessing spirit's jaw dropped, wondering if he was a player or a monster himself. There's no thrill in this at all. How boring. As the monster was defeated, the system messages appeared. You have defeated the boss of the 3rd floor. You have received a low-grade physical strength enhancement potion as a basic reward. The moment he got the potion, Tae San chugged it down as usual. He didn't even care what kind of stat it boosted. He just treated it like a soft drink. Holding the mage's staff in his hand, Tae San thought, "Up until now, I've only ever known that you have to borrow power from a magic staff to use magic. So how can I learn magic? The first option is pretty much impossible for me, so the second one is the best bet. The main system NPCs only appear in solo mode, and what if that NPC is hidden somewhere that even Tae San can't find? That would explain why no one can use magic. So, does this mean there's no way for me to learn it now? This is giving me a headache." Tae San decides to finish Rakka's quest first and worry about the rest later. Checking his system one last time before heading to the next floor, he feels like something is missing. But searching all 3 floors again would take way too much time. He decides against it, but then notices some very strange patterns on the wall. They were all pointing in one direction. Feeling suspicious, Tae San uses his unlock skill to see if he can find anything good. And sure enough, he does. After using the skill for a moment, a nearby wall suddenly crumbles, revealing a secret room behind it. The ghost was completely baffled. "Can you see through walls or something?" Tae San just smiled and replied, "This was the only wall made of the same material as the trap wall in the last room. I just took a shot in the dark and got lucky. To be honest, I had no damn clue what was hidden here." As the room opens, a system message appears. You are now encountering the former Goblin Lord, Hage Hawa. He was stunned that there was still a monster hidden this deep inside the room, and it was hidden ridiculously well. Upon seeing someone appear, it slowly reached for the sword at its hip and threatened, "I will not blame you for disturbing my peaceful retirement. After all, you are merely a plaything controlled by them. However, I am an existence that plays the role of a monster here. Therefore, I will kill you." As soon as he finished speaking, the monster swung its sword into the empty air. He thought it was just a show of force, but he was wrong. Its sword aura was so incredibly powerful that even from a distance, Tae San was hit and brought to his knees. He never expected it to be this strong. His sister Jiun had never mentioned this monster before, even though she had cleared all the trials. Seeing that he was still alive, the boss swung its sword for another strike. Knowing he would likely die if he didn't block that attack, Tae San lunged forward in a flash to parry its blow. However, the power gap was just too wide. After holding on for just a few seconds, Tae San was sent flying. With his current gear and stats, Tae San could easily clear all 50 floors on the easy difficulty. But here in solo mode, it was absolutely nothing. Knowing that the boss's weapon was a longsword, which is weaker in close combat, Tae San dashed in to get a quick hit, but it used the hilt of its sword to attack him. Luckily, his slide skill activated instantly, saving his life. However, staying alive didn't mean he was unharmed. Tae San was still injured and coughed up blood. Realizing that he would die sooner or later if he kept trading blows, Tae San decided to activate his counter ability, hoping to make it suffer damage from its own slashes. Despite this, the skill seemed to have no effect on this boss. It swung its sword, knocking Tae San backward and sending him sprawling to the ground. Without giving him any time to recover, it used a lightning sword attack, striking him relentlessly and causing him to lose a massive amount of health. Knowing he was no match for it, Tae San ran for his dear life. Seeing the kid getting beaten to a pulp, the warrior spirit became extremely worried and shouted, "That thing is not an opponent you can handle. You have to get out of here and leave this floor now. Come back when you're stronger. Don't you realize he's a lord? He's not the kind of opponent a player on the 3rd floor like you can possibly defeat. And he's not the type of monster that will spare an enemy for trespassing on his territory." Tae San stubbornly replied, "If I always play it safe, I'll never achieve anything. Because by the time the floor rewards are given out, they'll definitely be reduced. We're free to move between floors in this labyrinth. But when a player goes back down to a lower floor, the rewards for the previous floor are reduced. Both the experience points and gold will decrease, and the special rewards will disappear completely. So, to get all the rewards for this floor, I have to push through." Then, as soon as he recovered a bit of stamina, instead of running away, Tae San decided to stand up and fight it to the death. He completely ignored the spirit's desperate pleas. What a blockhead. This is a game where you can literally come back later. He could just go up, grind some tough monsters, and return. But no, he has to be dumber than a box of rocks. As he stood up, Tae San said to the spirit, "This isn't about survival. It's a life or death challenge. And every action I've taken to get the maximum rewards has been a calculated move to increase my chances of success." As soon as Tae San was ready to fight, system messages began to pop up continuously. No decision is required. You are facing an impossible opponent, but you are not giving up. Your fighting spirit will increase. Your stats have increased. Your morale will not fall during this battle. You have gained eyes that can detect an opponent's weakness. Glancing around to observe, Tae San realized something he'd missed since the start of the battle. The beast still hadn't left its throne, so it was likely crippled and unable to move. Our hero quickly dashed behind it and smashed the pillars to crush it. Not only that, Tae San also fired off dozens of poisoned arrows at the boss for good measure. Seeing this little trick, the boss smiled smugly. Then with a light swing of its sword, it turned the falling rubble and poisoned arrows into dust. Before it could even gloat, Tae San stabbed it straight through the chest. After landing the blow, he remarked, "Whether by skills or a forced one-on-one, nothing here other than you should be able to stand against me. Not even that pile of rocks over your head. And I'm not having any effect either. If I had to find an exception, it would be that weapon or some trick you're using." Then, Tae San lightly touched the throne, causing it to teleport away and making the boss howl in dismay. Truly a magnificent warrior. Since this labyrinth was created, no one has ever found me, let alone fought such a fierce battle against me. I thank the gods for allowing me to fight you today. The spirit could feel it. Before, it had only been able to see Tae San's victories against weaker opponents. This was the first time it could clearly see how. Tae San fought against a truly strong opponent, so it had been eagerly awaiting this. Then, once the throne was successfully teleported to another location, Tae San immediately rushed in to attack, his immensely powerful strike creating a massive explosion. After the dust settled, the throne had been shattered to pieces. The boss howled in agony. However, right after that, it unleashed 2 powerful sword strikes towards Tae San to put him in his place. Facing that incredibly powerful sword aura, he didn't flinch in the slightest and decided to take the hit head-on to gauge its true power. When the attack landed, Tae San's eyes rolled into the back of his head as he coughed up blood endlessly. The system announced, "You have received 462 damage. Resistance has been activated." The effect of this resistance was that it could prevent an instant death attack. In other words, I could become immortal for 1 second. And then, the thought had barely finished when Tae San dashed forward, unleashing 2 powerful slashes at the boss. Damn it. Seeing his slashes weren't effective, he switched to thrusting attacks. After stubbornly resisting for a while, it finally collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Before dying, it praised him for being an excellent warrior, and with that, the final monster of the 3rd floor was defeated. The system immediately announced, "You have defeated the Goblin Lord, Hagehoa." After reading the message, Tae San finally breathed a sigh of relief. It also informed him, "Your spirit has grown exceptionally. You have acquired the special active skill, Power Strike. This allows the user to empower their next attack. In addition, he also received the special skill, Hasten. Tae San was overjoyed to get such a great set of skills just from the third floor boss. In my past life, I only got this skill when I fought the final boss. This fight against the Goblin Lord was definitely more intense. I had no idea what the hidden reward was, but it turns out, it was a proficiency enhancement potion. Excellent. This will save me a lot of grinding. Now that he had such a great item, there was no reason to hold on to it. Tae San immediately put it on around his neck. He was now level 12, and his stats received a boost. A very well-balanced one. They were nearly on par with his easy mode stats from his past life, which made him ecstatic. After all, if he cleared the final floor, just how much stronger would he become? He couldn't even imagine it. Then, after resting and recovering, Tae San continued on his journey. The fourth floor was orc territory. They possessed great physical strength and were reasonably intelligent. They're born to fight. I wonder what this will be like. To better prepare for the upcoming battle, Tae San went to an altar of Banta to gather some information. This altar was built by Banta's followers and served as a way to connect with the god Banta, who exerted his influence through this place. After a quick scan, the system informed him that Banta was very pleased. The area of Banta's influence had shrunk. Banta has received the consent of the residents of the 4th and 5th floors. Then, the ground began to shake, so violently that Tae San fell to the ground. Just as he was wondering what the hell was going on and thinking about leaving, everything seemed to change. The confusing maze had transformed into a straight path. The spirit explained that since Banta had participated in the labyrinth's creation, this wasn't entirely beyond his power, but it was still a surprise. Now that the path was wide open, Tae San slowly opened the door and stepped into the first room. Waiting inside was a massive, hulking orc. When it saw him appear, it shot to its feet with blazing red eyes, brandishing its sword, ready to eliminate anyone who trespassed on its territory. Without waiting for Tae San to make a move, the orc drew its sword and launched a preemptive strike. However, with his lightning-fast reflexes, he dodged it with absolute ease. After that, he drew his own weapon to engage it. Despite its large and clumsy appearance, the giant orc's reactions were incredibly fast and nimble, able to parry all of Tae San's attacks. Realizing that normal attacks would be useless, our protagonist decided to use the new skills he had just acquired to attack it. As expected, the effect was immediate. It was struck clean through the heart. However, instead of grimacing in pain, the orc broke into a smile of pure ecstasy. Before he could figure out what the hell was happening, the system announced, "The orc is extremely satisfied with the battle. You have triumphed over the orc swordsman." He thought it would be a real challenge, but who knew it would be so easy? However, there were still 9 rooms left. So, without taking a break, he decided to clear them all. Then, he'd go grab a drink. And so, one after another, the monsters fell, as the system continuously announced his level-ups. This made him incredibly happy. Almost all the stages were cleared. Now, only the final boss remained. Without a hint of fear, Tae San kicked the door in and charged, not even caring who his opponent was. He saw that it wasn't any different from the previous monsters, so Tae San was extremely confident he could finish it off in a few minutes. Then, just as he was about to charge, he noticed someone else crying in the corner. It was probably his old friend, the ghost following him, who spoke up, "Why are you here? How are you still alive?" The moment she saw a handsome guy, the girl immediately ran over to ask for help. Crying her eyes out, the girl said, "The labyrinth suddenly changed and I was thrown out. The next thing I knew after waking up, that orc was standing right in front of me." Hearing this, the spirit couldn't stop laughing. Then he said to Tae San, "So that's why you were huddled in a corner like that? But you know what? This whole mess happened because of this kid here." Seeing the 3 of them casually chatting in front of it, the orc was utterly bewildered. "Are you guys just going to pretend I'm invisible?" Seeing it standing all alone, Tae San slowly walked over to check on it. He let the other 2 have their little heart-to-heart. Now that someone was finally paying attention to it, the monster broke into a satisfied grin. "Finally, someone acknowledges my existence. Hey. Then, just like with all the previous monsters, Tae San charged forward and slashed without mercy. After getting hit, the enraged orc roared and then swung its sword wildly at Tae San. However, he was on a completely different level now. Its attacks were almost completely useless. Then, after having his fun, Tae San swung his sword and sent it to meet its ancestors. Once that was over, he slowly walked over to talk with the girl. The girl introduced herself as Lilith, a magic user. "I came here to learn more about high-level mystical arts." Seeing that the girl was a mage, Tae San became extremely curious and excited. Noticing his curiosity, the girl happily explained, "Not everyone can learn magic. It's an innate talent. However, even though I don't have a shred of talent, I've always longed to learn magic. That's why I came here. Because the labyrinth is a place where people can make their dreams come true. Seeing Tae San turn away, lost in thought, the girl called out again, "Thank you for saving me, but I have nothing, so I'm truly sorry I can't repay you." Tae San looked at the girl thoughtfully, wondering if she was even 18 yet. Heh. The girl thought Tae San wanted her to repay him with her body, and her face went blank, looking quite delectable. She was just about to ask where they could find a cozy, clean place to repay him when Tae San turned back and said, "I was just talking about your magical powers. Don't overreact. Girls, I swear." Seeing Tae San wasn't interested in her, the mage said with a disappointed look on her face, "He doesn't ask about me, just about some useless magic." The ghost, seeing the girl beating around the bush, suggested, "You just need to teach him some basic moves. Why are you being so stingy?" And so, after some convincing, the girl finally agreed to teach Tae San a few tricks. Before they began, the mage warned, "Since I was kicked out of my previous place, I have nothing now. So I can't teach you anything yet. The 5th floor is the giant goblin floor. It won't be much different from this place. I'll set up a secret room on the 6th floor, so let's meet there." And with that, the three of them said their goodbyes. The girl used magic to vanish into thin air, leaving Tae San utterly astonished. A giant question mark popped into his head. She was just crying her eyes out in a corner a moment ago. Is she trying to trick me? Girls these days are so dangerous. As the girl vanished, Tae San thought to himself that he couldn't sense her at all. She had perfectly concealed all her traces. So that's magic. Anyway, with the monsters defeated, Tae San pulled out some meat to eat and opened the chat channel to see how his buddies were doing. It seemed like Kang Jun-ho and Lee Tae-yun had successfully cleared the 1st floor. Although their skill acquisition rate wasn't very good, it looked like besides those two, no one else was even going to try. Seeing no one was online, Tae San took out his loot to see if there was anything useful. And, sure enough, there were a few handy items. Holding a book, he had no damn clue what it said, but the system informed him. This was an imprint, an item with a special power already embedded. It then automatically updated to the ritual sword of Rakyat. Attack power +5, recovers 5 mana when a target is killed, and grants a certain probability to counterattack when attacking. Holding the newly buffed weapon, Tae San was incredibly excited and showed it off to his friend. An amazing clear reward. Isn't this too good to be called a random item? Then, as was his habit, after clearing a stage, he returned to the general store to buy some more supplies. Without wasting any time, the shopkeeper asked him what he wanted. Just a quick look around for anything interesting, and Tae San spotted a glowing jar. Asking the old man, he learned it was blessing powder, a powder said to come from fairy wings, rumored to bestow blessings. It gives the user 500 grams, just like its description. People say it can grant a blessing, but no one knows if that's just a rumor or the truth. Some guy even bathed in it for good luck, but instead, he passed out immediately. Another person applied it to his weapon, but it only made his sword shinier. When he asked the ghost, it said it had never bought the item either. Tae San thought to himself, just as I figured, nobody knows anything about it. In my past life, many people bought it because they believed the rumor that it could grant them a blessing, but none of them ever saw any effect from it. So, in the end, they treated it like garbage. That was before I discovered its one true use. Tae San then asked the man how many vials he had so he could buy them all. But the shopkeeper had no idea he was coming and hadn't stocked up, so now there were only 3 vials left in the shop. He had no choice but to bring them all out for the boy. With the items in hand, Tae San left excitedly. Seeing Tae San's silent demeanor, the ghost snapped. You are truly something else. I can't believe the gods are taking care of you this much, even after you've completely wrecked their labyrinth. The gods only care about their labyrinths, even when it comes to their most devoted followers. The gods only give them rewards. They don't lower the labyrinth's difficulty like this. And those followers will praise that mediocre reward as if it were some priceless treasure. The two of them continued talking as they descended to the 5th floor. As soon as they opened the door, a massive monster appeared, lying in wait. Seeing that it wasn't much more intimidating than the monsters on the 4th floor, Tae San drew his sword and charged in for a one-on-one fight. Because he had just received a power buff, it only took a few moves for Tae San to overwhelm it, and it quickly ended up face down on the ground. After finishing the monster without breaking a sweat, our hero grinned. Not bad at all. Even if it were as strong as a boss, I could still manage to finish it off quickly thanks to engrave. Anyway, if an enemy of this level appears in the very first room, it means the guy in the final Room is going to be incredibly strong. The stronger the enemy, the greater the reward. Tessan then continued to clear 4 more rooms. The monsters got progressively tougher, draining a lot of his energy. However, if I complete this floor, I'll not only receive a reward from the god, but also the ability to learn magic. With some time to spare, he turned to the ghost and asked, "How do you know that witch?" Finally getting a chance to speak, the ghost launched into a long story. "You know that we're immortal inside this labyrinth, right? That kid has been here since I first set foot in this place. Before that, she nearly died on the 4th floor because of the orcs. I saved all her. That was the first time we met. I'm not sure how long it's been out there, but it's probably been about 100 years already." Although she entered the labyrinth to learn magic, she wasn't someone who attracted attention due to her lack of talent. When I helped for her back then, I didn't think she'd survive this long. The one who survives isn't the one who completes the labyrinth, but the one who achieves their goal. Perhaps there are more NPCs on other maps than I thought. Thanks to Tassan's incredibly detailed guides, the new players had also cleared their first dungeons. However, on other difficulties like easy or normal, many people couldn't be bothered to listen and just did their own thing, then started trash talking and saying that the solo mode players just got lucky. Anyway, in every situation, there are always people who like to stir up trouble and poke at others. So Tae-san just ignored it. He thought to himself, this period of peace has become a poison to them, and they've started looking for an outlet for their anger. Instead of taking it out on their opponents in the labyrinth, they chose to take it out on the solo mode players, the ones with the fewest connections in the community. But it wasn't this bad in my past life, because I was there to keep that bastard in check. But since I'm not there now, he must have formed a guild and is dominating the easy difficulty. And when a guild needs a common enemy, he chose the solo mode players, an enemy that's almost impossible for them to ever actually confront. If it's true what the solo mode players say, that the different modes can't meet, he's probably thinking they can't ever get revenge on him. But there's one thing he doesn't know. After hanging up the call, Tae-san ran off to conquer the next stages. The boss of the 5th floor was the orc chieftain Lachian, looking formidable with a sword in each hand. But seeing how pathetic and weak he looked, Tae-san shook his head. Looks like I won't be getting anything good from this. How boring. Leaving the ghost behind, Tae-san drew his sword and stepped forward to engage him in close combat. Seeing his opponent showed no fear, the boss offered praise. "You are a brave warrior. I admire your fighting spirit. I thought that god of yours was useless, but this time, at least, I'll change my mind. Did my comrades satisfy you? We are slaves, trapped here for life. Our only release is ends, to be defeated. That is why, when we are near death, we often wear a bright smile, forgetting our glorious battles. We don't know when we'll be free, so do you think we would ever look down on you? Could you give us class? Not only freedom, but also a glorious death? Of course not. That would never happen. You should be proud, young warrior. Show me your strength and grant me a clean death." As soon as he finished speaking, he lunged, its berserk state, showing not a hint of fear. Tae-san drew his sword, confidently facing it one-on-one. Then, just as he wished, with his absolutely overwhelming power, our hero defeated it in a single blow. Before drawing its last breath, the boss whispered weakly, "Who? Are you really? Are you truly a 5th floor adventurer? You don't know the first thing about swordsmanship, yet you use sword-like skills. Also, your movements are definitely those of someone who has seen real combat. But thanks to you, I had a truly satisfying fight. To die in a battle like this is an honor." After it breathed its last, a series of notifications popped up in the system. "You have conquered the boss of the 5th floor. You have successfully passed the Blessing Committee's trial. The Blessing Committee is very happy. You have received the Belt of Fighting Spirit. Attack +3, Defense +3, increases stamina and mana by 5 points with every victory. You have received the Always Active Special Skill, Battle Record. Always Active Special Skill, Battle Record, Proficiency 1%, allows you to choose one stat to permanently and continuously increase. Without a moment's hesitation, Tae-san immediately chose mana as the stat to be increased. Then, just like on every other floor, he discovered the secret room. This time, there were 2 whole chests. However, the sword inside had stats that were only on par with the one he was currently using, so it wasn't anything special. Luckily, there was also an invisibility cloak inside, allowing the user to become invisible for 1 second, with a 1-hour cooldown. What the hell? What can I even do in 1 second? This is so damn disappointing. Well, I guess it's better than nothing. Tae-san put on the cloak and continued his journey. After traveling for a while, he finally arrived at a swamp. It was exactly as that girl Jun had described. This place has a swamp, so it won't be easy to win, because the monsters here are already used to the swampy terrain. Only the players have a hard time moving around. Seeing fresh prey appear after so long, the monsters gleefully told each other to come out and make a meal of him. However, this piece of meat was a little too tough. When he saw them get close enough, Tae San used his magic staff to create a hellfire. It roasted any creature that dared to approach. Before long, the monsters had all become smoked dinosaurs. He grabbed one by the neck and slammed it to the ground as easily as pie. And as always, Tae San annihilated them all, not leaving a single one within his sight. Once he was done, he left the forest. Tae San made his way to a stone tower. Seemingly noticing a mechanism right away, Tae San gave it a light touch, activating a staircase. It led straight up. Noticing the movement, the witch from the other day cheerfully ran out to greet him warmly. Then, to tease Tae San a little, she made him kneel down and formally accept her as his master, then put on an incredibly satisfied expression. After the master-disciple ceremony was complete, the girl began to explain. Unlike skills, magic cannot be self-taught. One must have it bestowed upon them by another, or earn it. That's why magic can do everything that skills can't. Things like creating fire, splitting space, or even distorting time. That's why magic is so highly valued. Besides, since I'm the one who's going to teach it to you, that makes you my disciple, right? I'm right, aren't I? So you should call me master, shouldn't you? Hehe. Seeing him stay silent, the girl raised her hand and created a purple flame to intimidate him. As she did, she explained, "That's what magic looks like to someone without any innate magical talent. At first glance, it just looks like a natural phenomenon. Since you come from a place where magic doesn't exist, that's understandable. Finally, the way to learn magic. It's simple. You just need to make a contract with a god. In my case, the god of magic appeared and gave it to me directly." After hearing this, Tae San had a question. So I have to sign a contract before I can learn? That might be a bit difficult, since I've already refused to sign a disciple contract a few times. However, because she was extremely fond of him, the pretty witch encouraged him. "Don't worry, I'm here for you." Then she lightly touched her hand to Tae San's chest. The system immediately announced, "You have received the Seeker of the Gods magic, arcane magic. You have obtained magic. Magic proficiency, 1%, allows the use of magic. You can temporarily only create small embers." Then, the girl demonstrated the magic and continued, "So, what do you see now? It really did look different from before." Wanting to try it out himself, he pulled 2 magic-related items from his system to use. Just a few seconds later, with some unknown power backing him, Tae San managed to create a flame in his hand, just like his master. Seeing her disciple learn so quickly, the girl showered him with praise, then added, "The second method is to learn magic from those who are already masters. Or you can make offerings to the gods, but that requires signing a binding contract, so you can't do that right now. Instead, I'll make the offerings first, learn the knowledge from the god, and then teach it to you. You just need to clear the next floors and collect items, so I can use them as offerings." Tae San agreed immediately, which made the young witch overjoyed, cheering excitedly. She hadn't been smiling for more than 3 seconds when Tae San asked, "By the way, master, can you teach me the spells you know now? Like invisibility and creating water?" The girl broke out in a cold sweat. She made an excuse. "I can't do that, my disciple. But honestly, to learn that, you have to. Paying some kind of price. It's not like we just magically know how to use these powers. We learn them from the gods, so we can't just teach to them to others willy-nilly. That's why you need to make an offering to get his approval." Hearing that he had to make an offering, Tae San pulled out countless swords and weapons from his system, asking if that was a sincere enough offering. His little sister looked them over for a moment and shook her head. "That's a lot, but it's not going to cut it, my friend. We're talking about magic here. Quantity alone isn't enough. We need quality." Hearing that quality was also needed, Tae San handed his sister the necklace and the sword he was currently using to see if they would do. The girl was flustered. Well, I'm sure he'll like it, but do you really think that's enough? You're going to have a hard time. Because with this, the god is only willing to grant you basic level magic." Seeing that none of his items were working, Tae San pulled a dry twig out of his pocket. It didn't look like much, but it was surprisingly valuable. As soon as she saw it, the girl's eyes lit up, and she told him, "This thing is enough to learn one type of basic magic." Then the girl explained further, "Invisibility is a high-level spell, so that's a no-go for now, but you can consider some others. You already have Fireball, right? So we can skip that. Ice Arrow is cast, the same way as Fireball. just with a different element. The detection skill will let you know the number and location of monsters, and concealment will help you hide your presence. The last one, food creation, allows you to create drinking water and food, but they have absolutely no taste. Without a moment's hesitation, Tae San immediately chose food creation. Okay, if that's what you want, you got it. The girl began to cast the spell, making the piece of wood float in midair, then recited a long string of incantations that I couldn't translate for the life of me. After a few seconds, a giant eye appeared in a cloud of smoke, leaving Tae San completely stunned. So, gods are real after all? Then, with just a glance, the god enchanted the dry twig, with a great deal of magic to make it more useful. After it was done, it vanished. And immediately after, the system announced that he had obtained the ability to create food, summoning an edible quantity of liquid and solid matter. The girl was also quite surprised, because for some reason, that god was being unusually lenient today. Usually, he'd create all sorts of trouble before granting his blessing. Then she asked him if he wanted to learn any other types of magic. Although he really wanted to, he had no more offerings, so he didn't dare ask for more, telling his master he'd come back for the next lesson. The girl smiled and agreed, telling her star pupil to bring something good the next time he came. The god would then bless him with even more overpowered magic. With that, Tae San bid his master farewell and left. As soon as he got outside, the main character cast his newly learned spell just for fun, and it turned out to be pretty amusing. Then he changed his clothes, right in the middle of the street, making the ghost blush bright red. Holy crap, this guy is seriously reckless. After changing, Tae San glanced to his left, and spotted a monster that had been stalking him for who knows how long. It saw that he had taken off all his gear, and his defense was now a big fat 0, so it immediately lunged in to attack him. However, Tae San was incredibly overpowered now. The small fry on this floor were truly no match for him. As the trident flew towards him, Tae San dodged it lightly, then caught it with his hand with incredible ease. Although he was slightly injured, the damage didn't go directly to his health but to his protective shield, so he was perfectly fine. He then threw the monster into a corner. Even such a gentle-looking toss left it covered in injuries. How insane. Then the system displayed another notification. You have taken less than half the damage. You have received the special passive skill, Fortitude. You did not expend any stamina on your first attack. You have received the special skill, Attack Nullification, which left the ghost, following him completely astonished. With so many skills, how the hell is he supposed to remember them all? After lying on the ground to rest for a moment, the monster recovered a bit of its strength and got back up. It furiously charged at him with its trident, trying to skewer him. This time, Tae San didn't even bother to dodge, letting the weapon pass right through his body. Turns out he was using his own body to test if the attack nullification skill was effective. What a truly reckless guy. Seeing that the skill seemed to work, Tae San grabbed the monster by the neck with incredible ease and then slammed it face first into a large tree. Seeing his own power increase so rapidly, without even needing any attack or armor-boosting items, Tae San was extremely pleased, showing a fully satisfied smile. Complete attack nullification doesn't help me block or dodge, it simply makes the attack vanish, so no opponent can counter this skill. Then, to test if his power was truly as overpowered as he thought, Tae San confidently walked into the boss room to solo it, completely naked. The ghost frantically tried to dissuade him. Don't be so reckless. Just because you can block the first hit, do you really have to be so cocky about it? Seeing his friend worrying too much, Tae San took out 3 vials of blessing powder from his system and sprinkled them all over his body. After that, he opened the door and walked in. Seeing someone illegally trespassing in its home, the lizard monster went into a rage and charged at him with its trident. Although the attack hit its mark, thanks to the skill that completely nullified the damage of the first strike, Tae San was perfectly fine without a single scratch. Even the little ghost had to admit that last move was impressive. This is not considered the first attack. To acquire the skill to nullify the second attack, you must endure the next 2 attacks, without losing any stamina. After seeing that stabbing him was useless, the monster aimed its trident at his head and swung. To further test the skill's effectiveness, he let it stab his shoulder again. Although it couldn't completely nullify the damage, the shield was still up, so Tae San was perfectly fine. The monster, having attacked so many times without drawing blood, started to panic. Is this guy the monster, or am I the monster here? And so it stabbed Tae San a few more times, but still, it had no effect whatsoever. While testing the skill, Tae San thought, the system will randomly add or subtract 10% of the damage. So if an attack has a value of 30, you have to rely on luck to see if the damage will be 27 or 30. But the effect of the blessing powder adjusted that ratio. If you use 3 or more bottles, you're guaranteed to receive the lowest possible damage. The system then announced, "You did not lose any stamina during the second attack. You have acquired a special, always active skill, complete nullification of the second attack," which made Tae San break into a very satisfied smile. Deciding he'd had enough fun playing around, he leaped into the air and kicked the thing right in the jaw. You'd think that would be the end of it, but no. Tae San juggled it like a soccer ball before kicking the monster straight into the sky. Even the ghost had to exclaim, "Did you really have to be so cruel?" Realizing his power was completely overwhelming for the monsters on this floor, Tae San charged in with a sword in each hand and annihilated a ton of them. After some grinding, he managed to get another useful skill, Weak Point Strike. It was a skill that could be easily obtained through diligent grinding, but he never had the time to get it before. He was always bogged down with tests. After clearing out all the small fry in front of the boss room, Tae San felt hungry again. So he ran to a corner, used magic to conjure a bowl of porridge, and started slurping it down. Then even created a cup of coffee for dessert. Life is good. While sipping his drink, Tae San created a flame with his magic, just to pass the time. Remembering that his master could create purple flames, he wondered how she did something so cool. He'd forgotten to ask. So, out of curiosity, he stood up and started messing around to see if he could figure it out, just so he could show her up later. After creating 3 fireballs in a row without seeing any difference, he threw them to the ground to extinguish them, and created 2 more to see what would happen. The result was the same. It was just a regular red flame. Realizing he couldn't change its color, Tae San tried another trick. After throwing it into the distance, he pulled out a mana potion, chugged it, and immediately dashed after the flame to get in front of it. Then he created another flame to absorb the first one and see what would happen. Sure enough, there was a major evolution. Normally, the flames were completely separate, but because of the high speed, when they collided, they created a bigger, more powerful flame. To test its power, Tae San threw it straight at a wall, creating a massive explosion. Seeing the very satisfying result, he broke into a pleased grin. Right after mastering the blazing fireball, Tae San confidently charged in to solo the boss. It was an incredibly ferocious fire lizard. The moment it saw someone trespass on its territory, it went berserk and lunged at Tae San. However, since animals are naturally afraid of fire, when it saw the massive fireball hovering over its head, the boss trembled and dropped all its weapons, and started crying its eyes out. Not wanting his enemy to suffer a painful death, Tae San used all his power to incinerate his opponent, as quickly as possible. Seeing a so-called boss that couldn't put up a damn fight, the warrior ghost just shook his head in disappointment. Having dealt with the 6th floor boss without breaking a sweat, Tae San was incredibly proud and smug. At this rate, I'm about to own the server, hee hee. Then, as usual, the system confirmed his victory and gave him his reward. This time, it was a staff of composure and another chicken necklace. Seeing that they were worse than what he was currently using, he felt a little disappointed, but Tae San just stuffed them in his bag to be used as sacrifices later, hee hee. He then returned to the tower. The day before, he had met his master Lily to learn a few more skills. Since the items this time weren't that great, the skill he received was just Ice Arrow. Having just upgraded the power of his fireball skill, Tae San took his master outside to show off his magic, which left the girl completely stunned, her jaw hanging wide open. "Did you get another master, you big oaf?" The girl then ran over and asked him, "How did you learn elementary magic?" "The only elementary magic I've learned in the past 100 years is invisibility." Magic has very distinct tiers. Basic magic is like imitation, so it can be imbued into a wand, but from the elementary level onwards, it can't be imbued into anything. The girl then plopped onto the ground, utterly confused. Seeing her surprise, Tae San explained. And after a moment, his master was practically petrified. He wondered, "My master has been training for 100 years and still can't do this? Are you kidding me?" The girl quickly sat up and explained, "Of course not. What kind of mage would train their stamina? But, thank you. Anyway, this is the first time I've ever seen this kind of magic training. Thanks to you, I'm getting to try a lot of new things." And so, after a pleasant chat for the whole evening, Tae San said goodbye to his master and continued his conquest of the dungeon. As he headed down the stairs, he pulled up the system window. He saw that he had now reached level 18, and his stats had increased very evenly, which made Tae San extremely happy. Because at this rate, in just 2 or 3 more levels, he'd be stronger than his past self. Before entering the 7th floor, he asked the ghost if it wanted to teach him swordsmanship, and it gave him a smug smile. Then it said to him, "Now, I will teach you the swordsmanship of my empire." The Cabos Empire was a nation highly regarded for its strength, which is why the weak were treated cruelly. The strong looked down on all the achievements of the weaker ones, and the royal family was no different. I had to point my sword at my own family's throats to claim the right of succession. Out of 6 siblings, I was the only survivor. Everyone in the labyrinth asks me how I could live in such a cruel world. But that was the only world I ever knew. Now, even if I wanted to, I can't go back. Even if I wanted to save it, that chance is already lost. That's why leaving behind even a single trace of that world is the only atonement I can make. After hearing this, Tae San entered a clean, cool room to learn the swordsmanship. Before starting the lesson, the ghost warned him, "Although this swordsmanship is extremely powerful, it has a weakness. It has absolutely no defense. I'll only teach you if you agree." Despite knowing about this weakness, Tae San still agreed to learn and gave a bright smile. Hearing this, the little ghost lightly touched him, then created another 3-dimensional space. Then, it transformed into a handsome young man. After transforming, the youth instructed, "A violent storm. Because it looks like a claw mark, it's called Scar. The Storm Scar sword style is the only thing left of my world." After saying that, it turned back into the small ghost, for some weird reason. Then, the ghost started teaching him verbally, "You will counter instead of blocking. You must constantly be moving to use the Storm Scar sword style. If you want to aim for the opponent's chest, you must cross your arms and move to the left. Then, use your body's flexibility to flow with the path of the sword's tip." After listening, Tae San didn't understand a damn thing. The ghost scratched its head and continued, "Damn it, how can you explain swordsmanship with just words? I didn't expect it to be this difficult. What should I do? It's not that you're not talented. It's difficult because I can't demonstrate it myself. You still have no experience, so just take your time. What do you expect after only practicing for 5 minutes?" Then, to speed up his progress, Tae San used a divine elixir that increased his skill proficiency by 5%, like a total cheat. How's anyone supposed to compete with that? Once the elixir took effect, Tae San transformed into a true swordsman, a blade in his left hand, and a blade in his right, moving as if possessed. Then, to test out his newly learned swordsmanship, Tae San ran into the forest to find monsters to fight. Seriously, using items makes a huge difference. He was on a whole other level. Just a few of his basic sword strikes were enough to wipe out the entire monster horde. After finishing off the monsters, it was already late, so Tae San lit a fire to rest. The ghost following him couldn't believe its eyes. It knew this guy was strong, but this strong? It actually felt sorry for the monsters. He spent 12 hours a day fighting, 6 hours studying swordsmanship, and only rested when he slept. He was a complete madman. Then, after a good night's sleep, Tae San started his new day by playing with rocks. When he got bored of that, he'd pull out his swords to mess around. He could now counter his opponent's attacks with ease. However, he felt like something was still missing. While he was pondering, a monster loomed before him and advanced. Just as he was about to make mincemeat of it like always, the ghost beside him spoke up, "Close your eyes." Although he had no clue what closing his eyes would do, he obediently followed the instruction. Then, it continued to advise him, "Your mind will become empty, and you will be guided by the sword. Predict your opponent's moves using only your intuition. Keep moving forward with the spirit of a wild beast." And so, following his master's guidance, as if in a dream, Tae San swung his swords. Every single hit was a critical strike. Even though he had no defense, his power was so overwhelming that the monster couldn't land a single blow. After 2 slashes, it lay sprawled on the ground. Seeing this, the ghost praised him lavishly. The first form of the Storm Scar sword style, Wolf's Fang. There's still much more, but I can't teach it to you while you're fighting these small fry monsters. Even when we get to the 10th floor, it'll be difficult for me to teach you the second form. But you did well. You've mastered the first form perfectly. Meanwhile, in another dungeon, his sister Zeon was sobbing as she devoured chunks of monster meat. As she ate, she recalled the delicious meals of the past. Now, she could only dream of having such food. Just as she was wondering when she would ever escape this miserable hell, the system suddenly announced, "Special quest initiated. Return to Earth. In 1 week, you will return to the place you left behind. You must survive and return. The reward will depend on your performance. You cannot refuse this quest." She was overjoyed at the thought of returning home, but the global chat channel suddenly erupted into chaos. No one knew what to make of this information. Their feelings were a mix of joy and anxiety. To get a better grasp of the situation, everyone decided to talk in the global chat channel. Everyone was thrilled about finally escaping this god-forsaken maze, but many were also worried that Earth was now even more dangerous. Since it had been overrun by monsters, they didn't know whether to be happy or sad. One guy raised his hand to object, saying, "This wasn't exactly good news," and the big shots snapped at him. "If you want to stay, you can stay here alone. We're leaving." "Fine. Over here." Tae San was still quietly observing everyone's reactions, knowing that time was running out to leisurely explore the Labyrinth Island. Tae San promised himself he had to speed things up even more. And so, he flawlessly completed the conquest of the 7th floor. The reward in the treasure chest was a stone that increased agility by 10 points. On top of that, while searching the monster corpses, he also found a pair of earrings that increased mana by 10 points, and so he had to grit his teeth and pierce 2 holes to wear them. After looting the gear, Tae San returned to his beautiful master to learn new skills. After finishing up with his master, he continued his journey. As soon as he stepped down to the 8th floor, the system displayed the condition for clearing it: defeat the final boss of this floor. And then, he was greeted by a large bird. It had been a while since he had bird meat. Tae San bounced off the wall, leaped into the air, and slammed its head into the ground with just one simple move, and it was defeated. How pathetically weak. Since time was short, he put aside the thought of eating, and Tae San used magic to annihilate all the monsters, blocking his path, then walked towards Oman's altar. As soon as he approached the pedestal, the system immediately displayed a notification. "Oman wants to test you. You have reached his altar. Oman will decide your reward, based on the results you achieve. A quest means more items." Tae San grinned brightly, accepting the mission right away. Immediately after, the water in the basin flowed out and merged to form a human body. The system required him to defeat it. Okay, if it wants a fight, it'll get one. Tae San drew his 2 swords and jumped back to observe and size up his opponent. However, it was too slow. A light swing of his sword was enough to cut off its head. He thought that was it, that it was way too simple. But no. From inside the water basin, another one emerged. Although it was faster than the last one, Tae San still easily defeated it with just a single move. After that, another, even faster, one appeared. Only now did Tae San understand the principle behind it. If he could defeat a high-tier monster, it meant better and more valuable items. And so, he just kept slashing, one after another. Although each new monster was stronger than the last, they were still no match for Tae San. He still dealt with them with utter ease. And so, when he got tired of using his sword, he used ice. And when he got tired of ice, he used fire to keep the battle from getting boring. After using his skills, his proficiency level also kept rising, which made him extremely happy. A moment later, the final monster was defeated. Tae San was super excited, wondering what the hell his reward would be. The curiosity was killing him. However, after waiting for a bit, the system didn't announce anything. The ghost burst out laughing, unable to stop, and said to Tae San, "I get it now. You've got to be kidding me, man. What a freaking clown. This trial of the god Oman is limited to the same level as the floor the challenger is on, and then it stops. If you want to continue the challenge, you have to pay a fee. It seems he feels it's a waste to let his area of influence be gradually limited." Hearing that, Tae San was speechless with disappointment. In any case, the monsters just now weren't that strong. Anyway, just as he was about to dust himself off and leave, the system announced again. Oman's level of intervention is decreasing. Oman proposes a more difficult challenge for you. Oman is feeling very conflicted. Oman's trial, prove your strength, once more. Reading the quest notification, the spirit burst out laughing, as if he'd just had a baby. Who in their right mind would trust that guy again? He thought. However, since he was already halfway through, Tae San decided to go big and accept the mission to see if he'd get anything good out of it. After fighting a few more rounds, mannequins with the same level as the higher floors finally appeared. Now this was something to look forward to. From then on, the monsters that appeared grew stronger and stronger. However, with the new swordsmanship he had just mastered, Tae San could still overcome them, though it wasn't a piece of cake like before. Despite having fought them for a while, Tae San still didn't know what kind of creatures they were, until the spirit informed him, "They are those who have taken the trial and failed, those who have made deals with the god, and those who have fallen and offered up their souls. They are just mannequins of adventurers who have vanished throughout this labyrinth's long, long history." And so, after a few more battles, Tae San finally cleared floor 13 and then floor 14. They were starting to use many different skills now. Sure, they had a lot of skills, but this mannequin was way too reliant on them, so its movements were kinda janky. This mannequin was even easier to deal with than the last one. Starting now, will the level of these mannequins be the same as mine, or higher? Either way, I have to try to clear as many as I can. After clearing the 15th floor, the system updated. The rewards: strength +6, agility +5, mana +4, and a spirit enhancement reward. After that, Tae San continued clearing the floors. Just like that, he reached the 18th floor. The mannequin was quite a bit stronger, and could even create a dragon. However, it still had to taste defeat at Tae San's hands. This guy must be using some broken cheats. For real, no normal person could keep up with this. Perhaps the real storm was only just beginning to hit him now. The mannequin on the 19th floor was a giant, 3 times the size of a normal person, wielding a massive axe that it swung towards Tae San. However, he blocked it cleanly. The system was continuously displaying notifications. Surrender now. You're no match for it. Ignoring the system's advice, Tae San went all out for the reward and charged in to fight it one-on-one. As he fought, Tae San thought, this charge skill makes the body spin and slash at a 270-degree angle, but its weakness is that once activated, it can't be stopped midway, and it would expose its back right after the accelerate and fierce strike skills were activated simultaneously. Tae San leaped up and stabbed it straight in the chest, and sure enough, it was instantly effective. The training dummy had been defeated. The next floor's training dummy is about to appear. The moment the announcement ended, it approached and immediately used its ultimate skill, Absolute Victory, to attack Tae San. Although the system advised him that the current rewards were already pretty good, the greedy and stubborn Tae San refused to listen. He still drew his sword and recklessly charged in to attack it. Some people just have to learn the hard way. They never listen. The moment he got close, Tae San was smacked so hard it stung, almost shattering his profile picture. Pissed off, he turned and used Frenzy to attack it. However, the dummy was no pushover either. It also activated Counterpulse to retaliate, sending Tae San flying and crashing to the ground. That's what you get for being stubborn. He painfully sat up and wiped his face. Tae San thought to himself, this counter skill knocks the opponent back a distance depending on the player's stats. I learned this skill pretty late. In any case, this dummy doesn't have much health left. Might as well just tough it out a little longer. Then, as soon as he recovered a bit of stamina, Tae San dashed forward, activating Accelerate and Fierce Strike to attack it. Because he used all his strength to attack, his defense was left wide open. Although he managed to slash it once, he also got hit by a sword and lost a whopping 200 health. Knowing he couldn't win fair and square, Tae San jumped up, activated his invisibility cloak, snuck behind it, and landed a cheap shot. Thanks to his stubbornness and his willingness to cheat, Tae San successfully cleared the 20th floor. Exhausted, Tae San sat down on the ground to rest for a bit. Just then, the 21st monster appeared from a puddle of water. No longer feeling greedy, Tae San raised his hands in surrender. All right, man, this is far enough. The moment he finished speaking, the system announced, the trial has ended. Please wait for him to bestow your reward. After a moment of calculation, he granted Tae San a ring of steadfastness, with +5 strength and +5 defense. What a piece of junk. Seeing the reward was so lame, he proposed making a sect contract with him, but was flatly rejected. What the hell? Fine, whatever, your loss. Having been rejected, he spitefully splashed water in Tae San's face, leaving him utterly confused. What kind of weird-ass NPC is this? Then, he dusted himself off and left. As he walked, he reflected, so my current limit is the 20th floor. This was actually incredibly useful information. At this level, this challenge was probably worth letting the public know about. I should also inform those too. Before telling his 2 underlings, Tae San went to conquer the secret room and kill the 8th floor boss to warm up. Even though it was a boss, he was taken down with a single blow, which made Tae San start to feel bored. For crying out loud, do you guys have to be this weak? Sitting on the monster's corpse, he opened the secret chest to see what was inside. The system announced, Rune of Marius, increases the chance of adding an attribute to a weapon. Feeling like he was running out of time, Tae San decided not to go meet the witch. Instead, he ran straight down to the 9th floor. Although the monsters on this floor were fully equipped with helmets and armor, no longer as primitive as the previous floor, they were still no match for Tae San. With just one basic attack, he sent them all to meet their maker. Not having much time left, Tae San ran straight to the boss room to confront it directly. Without wasting any time, Tae San activated his invisibility cloak and coldly finished it off with a single slash. Immediately after, he headed to the secret item room. This time, he had to face another boss, named the Goblin Lord. Drawing his weapon, the Lord spoke to Tae San while sitting on his throne. Sooner or later, we all die. So before I go, I want to leave some kind of achievement behind for the world. Is that so wrong? Clearly, dying as a lord is very different from dying as a nameless goblin. I knew this day would come sooner or later, but it still feels strange. But I guess I have to accept reality. Right? Let's fight, young warrior. Tae San scowled and cut him off. You talk way too damn much. Do you have any idea how much of my precious time you've wasted? Then, with a sword in each hand, he charged straight at him. As they clashed, the boss said, "This is a problem. I can't match your skill, and I never expected my body's movements and my swordsmanship to be so out of sync. My chance of winning is 0, but it doesn't matter. I'll just give it my all. Because the most glorious moment is to die on the battlefield." And then, a moment later, he breathed his last. As always, defeating a boss meant getting a reward. This time, he received the Swift Spear with +10 attack. In addition, he also received the title King Slayer. Its effect: whenever you face a king, lord, or monarch of a species, your stats and rewards will be automatically increased. Then, since it had been a while since he saw the witch and he kind of missed her, Tae San decided to go back and find her to learn some magic. Feeling like he still had a good bit of cash, he went back to the shopkeeper to buy a few trinkets. With that done, Tae San continued on his journey. After a short walk, he finally reached the 10th floor. The ghost floating behind him chimed in. "Don't you forget the mission I gave you. Hee hee." Then, it thanked him for accompanying it this whole time. Even though it was a bit chatty, he didn't shoo it away. He wasn't focused on grinding monsters anymore, so Tae San just concentrated on getting to the secret room to grab the loot. After that, all he had to do was find and kill the boss. This time, the secret room's reward was a blue ring that increased his mana by 10 points. Tae San then headed to the boss room to complete the ghost's quest. To make killing it easier, Tae San took out his gear to enhance it. Holding the brand new item in his hand, he was incredibly excited, eager to test out its true power right away. However, just as he was about to break down the door and enter, the air suddenly ripped apart. It seemed his time in the labyrinth was up, and Tae San was pulled back to earth. Unlike the smell of wild grass in the labyrinth, this place was completely different, characterized by the strong stench of asphalt. He realized this wasn't an illusion, it was really Earth. The ghost panicked, having no idea what the hell this place was. It didn't resemble any of the labyrinth's floors. Ignoring its screaming and complaining, Tae San, who was craving food from Earth, walked into a supermarket. He wanted to see if there was anything good inside. However, since 3 months had passed, most of the food had spoiled and reeked of rot. Luckily, there were still some canned goods and bottled water with longer shelf lives. Tae San used his fire skill to grill some meat and ate it with relish. After eating his fill, he packed a large bag of food to eat later if he got hungry. The ghost was constantly asking questions. This world looked completely unfamiliar, so Tae San had to explain everything to it, one by one. Those square blocks are the houses people live in these days, and those metal lumps on the road are cars, which serve the same purpose as horse-drawn carriages from the old days. While he was explaining, he spotted a massive spatial rift in the sky. Just as he was thinking about finding the other survivors to see how they were doing, a green monster that had been lurking somewhere lunged out to attack. It was fast, but compared to Tae San, it was just child's play. He effortlessly grabbed its tentacle, then spun it around a few times to teach it a lesson. When he got bored, he used a fireball to burn it to ashes. The system then announced that a special mission had begun. You must go to Anhwa City Hall. The condition: you must survive until you get there. They wandered the entire street but didn't run into a single person. Tae San started to feel a little worried. After walking a bit further, all they saw was a corpse propped up in a corner. As they passed a street corner, a young man suddenly ran out and struck up a conversation. "You also got the mission to go to the city hall, right? This is the first time I've seen you. You don't look like a hard mode player. Are you on easy or normal? I'm Gun, and I play on hard mode. There's a group of players over there. Want to join us?" It had been a long time since he'd seen another person, so even though he didn't know the guy, Tae San agreed to follow him. A short while later, they arrived. The atmosphere here was cheerful and bustling, a stark contrast to the desolate silence of the dungeon. Because they had chatted a few times in the general channel, many people recognized him instantly as Tae San, the rare player on solo mode. Glancing around, he noticed there were about 100 people, but most of them were just easy and normal mode players. When the ghost saw that no one was talking to it, it correctly guessed that it was invisible to everyone but Tae San. Seeing that everyone had probably gathered, Gun signaled for them all to head towards the city hall. The easy and normal mode players were very nervous, but the young man reassured them, promising to protect them. Seeing Gun, all the guys and girls were moved to tears. He was handsome and kind-hearted, a total dreamboat. The warrior spirit glanced over them in disappointment. What kind of players are these? They're so damn weak. They look like a bunch of refugees, with zero combat skills whatsoever. Among them, that Gun guy seems somewhat useful, but that's his limit. I don't think he could handle the deeper floors of the labyrinth. Why does Tae San even want to meet this guy? And to think he'd willingly join this group of trash. After walking for a bit, they encountered a 2-meter-tall monster. It looked incredibly filthy and slimy. As a hard mode player, Gun reassured everyone, telling them to just stay back and cheer him on. He, on the other hand, stepped forward to face it directly. This monster was only F rank, so even an easy mode player could defeat it. But to a certain extent, that was only true by the labyrinth's standards. Right now, only someone from hard mode could take on this monster. Even though it was just a small fry, Gun was breaking a sweat fighting it. After struggling for a few minutes, he finally emerged victorious. Seeing him fight like that, everyone showered him with praise. Only Tae San's expression remained unchanged, looking utterly disdainful. After that, the same situation kept repeating. Gun would handle all the monsters that appeared on the road, while the rest of them hid to stay safe. And if another monster showed up while he was fighting, instead of helping, they would just try to run away. Tired of just standing in a corner playing a background role, Tae San picked up a few pebbles, fiddled with them, and then tossed them at the monster. He saved everyone. When they all turned around and saw the monster was gone, they were completely stunned. Huh? Where the hell did it go? After wiping out the monster blocking their path, Jian rushed in to check on everyone. No one admitted to being the one who did it. They were fighting the monster, but somehow it had miraculously vanished without a trace. After hearing this, Jian couldn't believe his ears, since he was the only hard difficulty player here. Then, he glanced over at Tae San, thinking, could it be? Most people would tremble at their first sight of a monster, but this guy was perfectly calm, as if he knew this would happen. And man, his name is a real headache. Feeling like they were running out of time, Jian rallied everyone to keep moving forward. While Jian moved up to handle the monsters in front, Tae San would secretly take out any that appeared from behind. The journey continued like that, as he followed the spirit with growing anger. What the hell are these people even doing? Even if they're weak, they could handle this if they just work together. But these guys don't even try. They just keep running away. Unable to take it anymore, the spirit yelled, "You goddamn flies, forget fighting with your lives on the line. They don't even look like they want to lift a finger. More of these worthless humans entering the maze? What a joke. This is an insult to us." Tae San frowned. For fuck's sake, who's going to hear you yelling like that? I'm the only one who can, and it's pissing me off. Besides, no one is strong right from the start. They risk their lives to keep fighting and become stronger. Don't be so angry. If anything, I'm the strange one here. Unlike me, these people chose the easy, normal, or hard difficulty mazes. Each mode has a different structure of monsters and bosses on each floor. The only things they have in common are the layout of each floor and the fact that the final floor is always the 100th. If there was some being who didn't know how to create a special maze, but only knew how to carelessly copy one, then this situation would make sense. But considering the scale of it, this would be difficult to pull off. Why would someone do this? Could the one behind this be a god? Or maybe something even higher? Thinking back, all the monsters that have appeared so far were F rank. If that being wanted to kill us, they should have sent out A rank monsters to fight. But the way he's controlling it, it feels like he's just observing us. They say gods love to watch humans struggle, don't they? This is dangerous, the spirit wondered. If you want to help them, instead of doing it in secret, why don't you just show them what you can do? You love helping people, don't you? Tae San explained. I only help those with potential. The reason I'm helping him is because he's worthy of my goodwill, and of surviving with me until the very end. I don't care if these people live or die, but if they die, Jian will be at a loss. In his past life, he also led a group just like this one, but by the time he reached the city hall, he was all alone. Night eventually fell. Everyone found a place to hide, taking the chance to eat and get some strength back for the next run. Even though monster meat tastes like absolute crap, they had no choice but to force it down or starve. Sitting in a dark corner, Tae San quietly pulled out some canned meat and started digging in by himself. Seeing him eat so well, everyone was incredibly jealous but could only stare. While he was enjoying his meal, a 2-meter-tall young man came over to pick a fight. Hey, Why aren't you sharing with everyone? You said you came from the normal difficulty, right? Then you definitely know who I am. Seeing a fight about to break out, people rushed over to watch, buzzing with excitement. That's Lee Chung-sok, the leader of the Athena Guild. Oh no. Why did it have to be? Athena, what a shame. If you don't want to die when we get back to the maze, hand it over to me now. You don't want to go up against my guild, do you? Listening to those friendly threats, Tae San replied calmly, I'm not so sure. You'll have a hard time even making it back there. Enraged by the taunt, the young man clenched his fist and lunged at Tae San. Just as a huge fight was about to break out, Jian ran over and intervened, saving the guy's life. He was still yelling defiantly, God damn it, this is personal, let us handle it ourselves. Hearing this, Jian got pissed, clamped the guy's mouth shut, and lifted him into the air. While holding him up, Jian warned him quietly, Don't push it, this isn't funny. Then he threw the guy to the ground with a thud. With that settled, he slowly walked away. It was the first time Tae San had seen Jian act like that, and he was surprised. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, he went to talk to him. You must be exhausted after all those fights. Instead of resting, you're on night watch? Those people are all afraid of you. They're also worried they'll be left behind by the group. Jian continued, I didn't have any other choice. I had to do it sooner or later. We have too many people, and a lot of dangerous situations are going to come up. To survive together, I have to make them follow my orders. Thanks to you, I had a chance to make them listen. I really appreciate it. Tae San praised him. You're really strong, my friend. You could easily make it to the city hall alone. I'm sure you know that very well since you're from the hard difficulty. With people, if they're meant to live, they'll live. If not, they die. The survival rate on the hard difficulty is 1%. So if you just live there for a short while, you'll definitely come to understand that. Helping those with no chance of survival? In the end, you're only prolonging their lives for a moment. Why are you so fixated on these people who are doomed to die anyway? Just as he was about to argue back, Jian sensed that something was off. There it is. That chill down my spine. It's a strange feeling, as if he's witnessed countless deaths. That look in his eyes, I knew it. There's no way he's from the normal difficulty. He then gripped his sword tightly and demanded to know who Tae San was. If I told you now, it would spoil all the fun. So Tae San just walked away, telling him they'd talk once they reached City Hall. For now, you should get some rest. The next morning, Gun woke everyone up, and they all headed towards City Hall together. There were a few things they had overlooked. First, the monsters would only attack those heading for City Hall. Second, anyone who went there alone had either already made it, or they were dead. As the monsters grew in number, I couldn't hold them back on my own, so I had to shout for everyone to run. I can't even guarantee I can handle 2 monsters at once. 3 is definitely impossible. Even so, City Hall is right up ahead. I just need to buy enough time for them to get there. And so, Gun fought with everything he had, single-handedly trying to wipe out the monsters to protect everyone. He was fighting bravely, but there were just too many of them. Plus, having to protect a bunch of useless baggage was a huge distraction. What a bunch of cowards. Even normal people should be fighting back, but these guys are just crying and begging for someone to save them. Absolutely pathetic. Pushed into a corner and surrounded, Gun didn't know what to do. He couldn't understand why the monsters were so desperate to kill them. What am I supposed to do now? I don't have any useful items left, and there's no way I can beat them. Even if I try to hold them off, everyone else will die. If I escape from here alone, I might be able to survive. My strength and speed are on par with these monsters, so if I move quickly, dodging them won't be too hard. Should I just abandon them? But haven't these people trusted and followed me this whole time? I'm the one who brought them here. If I'm just going to abandon them like this, I might as well have not saved them in the first place. If I'm going to protect them, I have to see it through to the very end. So, what choice do I make now? If only I could die in their place. No, if only I were stronger. Seeing him hesitate, Tae San stepped forward and spoke up. Are you thinking of leaving? Whatever you choose, I won't blame you. I'm just a little curious. Gun collapsed to the ground, sobbing, blaming himself for being too weak to protect anyone. Instantly, a monster lunged at him. However, with a single, sharp slash of sword energy, Tae San split it clean in 2. After taking care of it, he said quietly to the kid, just take a rest. I'll lend you a hand. Then, Tae San confidently stepped forward to face the horde of monsters. Although they were numerous and ferocious, Tae San was on a completely different level and easily defeated them, with just a flick of his wrist. Once it was over, everyone continued on to City Hall. It seemed like other people had the same mission to get there as well. So, as soon as they arrived, Tae San's group met many other people, and so, our protagonist also stepped inside to see what was going on. This city's population was about 500,000, but now, not even 100,000 have survived. It's truly brutal. He then went to a corner to reflect on things. While he was lost in thought, Jian offered him a bottle of water, scratching his head and saying Tae San was a solo player who'd been hiding his skills. As he chugged the water, he praised his friend, saying his fighting skills were pretty decent. Hearing the praise, Gun immediately grabbed Tae San's hand and said, "Not only did you share useful skills with me, you also saved my life. I will do everything you say. If you wish, Mr. Tae San, I can serve you for a long time." Hearing that made his skin crawl. So Tae San angrily threw the water bottle at Jian's face and yelled, "Stop talking nonsense and please act like a normal person." Despite being yelled at like that, the young man just stared blankly and praised Tae San for having such a strong spirit. It was the first time anyone had ever sucked up to him like that. Tae San thought to himself, what the hell is wrong with this kid? He's friendly, sure, but he was never this intense before. While they were having their little chat, someone walked up to them. He thought it was a stranger, but it turned out to be the beautiful Kim Hyun, a player from the hard difficulty. As she approached, she started explaining, "Right now, there are at least 100,000 people gathered at City Hall. But the problem is, out of all these people, only 1,000 of them can actually fight monsters. That's because most of them are from the easy and normal difficulties. Not only that, but we're also facing a severe shortage of food and places to rest. There are a lot of problems. We don't know what quest will open up next. But before that, we have to choose a leader. I already tried, but there's this guy named Choi Dong-hyuk from the easy difficulty who's pulling all sorts of crazy stunts to become the leader," I argued, asking how someone who can't even beat a single monster could possibly lead us. But he just shot back at me. He asked if I was looking down on people from the easy difficulty. He's even started imprisoning people. I think confronting him rashly would be dangerous, so I've held off on making a decision. Gun asked, "Who was captured?" She said it was Lee Ji-hoon and Kang Jun-ho. Those names sounded exactly like his two friends from the solo difficulty. Tae San couldn't figure out how people that strong got captured. It was a huge question mark for him. The girl didn't know the reason either, but when they arrived, the two were already tied up. Pissed off, Tae San stepped forward and told his sister, "Look, whatever happens, the first thing we need to do is rescue those two." Zeon desperately tried to stop him, demanding he not use violence. Things are chaotic enough as it is. Tae San stepped up, getting right in his sister's face, and reminded her softly, "The world has already collapsed. What good is the law now?" His sister kept trying to reason with him. "Even so, we can't do that. We have to maintain order. Humans shouldn't kill other humans." That left Tae San speechless, remembering how, in the past, she had always been so strict about upholding the law. If he remembered correctly, this was during his third regression. Right until the end, she died, trying to uphold the law and protect everyone. Seeing Tae San fall silent, his sister thought to herself, "This man is dangerous. He might actually kill someone. He's probably on the same level as Gun. With any luck. No. I have no choice but to stop him." But just as she was about to move, smack asterisk, Tae San struck first, sending Zeon face-planting onto the ground. Even Gun, who was standing nearby, was left with his jaw hanging open. "Dude, what the hell? Did you really have to hit a girl like that?" Then, Tae San stomped his foot lightly on the ground, and the floorboards cracked apart. Immediately after, he shot off like the wind, much to his subordinates' astonishment. In a past life, the man they were after was a notorious debt collector. While on a job, he was suddenly transported to a labyrinth. He was chased by a monster, scared out of his wits, but luckily, someone came to his rescue. However, with the same scumbag mentality he had as a gangster, he turned around and killed the very person who saved him. After doing something so despicable, he smugly thought, "There are no laws or rules inside a labyrinth. In a confined space like this, all it takes is a little push to make everything go crazy. A place like this is a paradise for high-level players, and when conflicts arise, you handle them with a mix of violence and appeasement. If someone knows how to keep their mouth shut, they might even get rewarded. That's the perfect way to control this labyrinth. It's so amusing watching them all obey my every command." Seeing how smug he was, Zeon angrily yelled, If you hadn't pulled that stupid trick, you would have been dead a long time ago. Don't get so arrogant. Plopping down into a chair, he said smugly. Yeah, I did it. So what? You guys are definitely strong. I'll give you that. But too bad for you, Lady Luck is on my side. He then recalled how he wasn't just summoned directly into the safe zone, near the city hall, without running into a single monster, but also how the solo mode players he'd been afraid of turned out to be pathetically weak. They were no better than the mobs from easy mode, so I took them down without breaking a sweat. I guess those solo players are only focused on surviving, so they're not that strong. Thanks to them, I realized something. I admit, I was a little surprised when you all arrived. But humans have brains for a reason. You should have just abandoned the person who was captured and fought me properly. It's because you're so kind and weak that you get taken advantage of by someone intelligent, like me. Let me tell you, you solo mode players are nothing special. Just as he finished speaking, the door suddenly burst open, leaving him completely shocked. He wondered what kind of arrogant bastard would dare barge in like that. From within the smoke, Tae San slowly walked out. The man felt an incredibly powerful aura radiating from him. The villain was so scared, he almost pissed himself. He thought, my instincts are screaming at me. I absolutely cannot let him get any closer. The man grabbed his walkie-talkie and yelled, Stop right there. If you take one more step, I'll order my men to kill all the other hostages. Just as Tae San was about to send him to his grave, Gun walked over, supporting Xian, and tried to calm him down. How dare you say you'll kill all the hostages? If you keep pushing things this far, I won't just stand by and do nothing. But with his typical arrogance, the man just sighed and said, It's simple. What I want is my own safety and command authority. If you can guarantee me that, the hostages will be fine. When Xian flatly refused, he snapped, I know you're all strong, but have any of you ever actually led other people? Well, I have. In fact, I manage all the people in my mode. You, little girl, what's the most you've ever led? A group project for homework? You think you can look down on my experience? How does a brat like you dare to stand up to me? He thought, they can kill monsters, sure, but they can't bring themselves to kill another person. This bastard can't touch me, not in front of his little friend. Anyway, in the end, this will all go exactly as I've planned. Right in the middle of his arrogant speech, the walkie-talkie suddenly vanished from his hand. He turned to see Tae San crushing it into pieces, as if it were tofu. Hyuk had no idea when Tae San had snatched it, leaving him completely baffled. However, being the cunning snake he was, Hyuk had another backup plan. Instantly, he shoved his hand into his pocket to activate a trap, causing countless steel beams to come crashing down right on top of Tae San. Everyone in the room was terrified for him, but to Tae San, this was nothing more than child's play. Just a few seconds later, Tae San walked out from the wreckage without a single scratch, leaving everyone completely stunned. A system message popped up. Tae San had received 0 damage. Realizing he'd just kicked a hornet's nest, Hyuk ordered his henchmen, who were hiding in the wings, to surround him. Damn, no one knew where so many of them came from. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen men, all fully armed with blades, had appeared. The swordsman charged Tae San without a shred of mercy, so he summoned an ice blade from his system and swung it lightly through the air. In just a few strokes, they were all dead. Seeing this, Hyuk was terrified, realizing he was next to share their fate. Tae San remarked casually, Your side has so many people. If your opponents were Lighten and Kang Hyuk, they might have lost. But I'm not them. As he spoke, he slowly closed in on Hyuk, planning to snap his neck with his bare hands. Then, after a moment's thought, Tae San grabbed him by the throat and slammed him into a wall, creating an open space in the middle of City Hall. The ghost who'd been watching from below finally saw something interesting. He flew over to talk to Tae San. Well, Tae San, finally decided to have a little fun, have you? Haha. Trapped in an extremely dire situation, his life hanging by a thread, Hyuk trembled uncontrollably with fear. Then, to make a show of his power, Tae San casually crushed the man's head in front of countless people, then tossed his body to the ground. The onlookers were horrified. Did he have to be so cruel? What a monster, a murderer. With everything settled and finding nothing else of interest, Tae San and the ghost strolled down a small street, watching the beautiful sunset. I'm just a normal, easy mode player, while that bastard was the top-ranked player on easy mode, so I had a really tough time back then. It took me months of grinding in the dungeon to get strong enough to barely defeat him, but this time, it was so easy. As he was standing in a corner, pondering his life, his subordinate Gun-ho approached with a report. You're probably in trouble now. Leon and the others are saying that. Before he could finish, Tae San waved him off. I couldn't care less. In any case, they won't be able to say much for long. In City Hall, many of the hard mode players were furious. Outraged by Tae San's cruelty, they were discussing how to deal with him. One man stood up and declared, "We cannot just let him go. No matter how serious the situation was, he had no right to kill another person. He must be punished according to the law, even if Kang Jun-hyuk was the one who started it." But his response went too far. "We need to punish him." Enraged, Zeon stood up, slammed her hand on the table, and retorted, "So you're saying we should punish the one person who can single-handedly fight off that many other players? Someone that even I can't handle?" An old man shot back, "You said you were a university student, didn't you? If so, it's understandable that you don't know. But this world cannot be a place that favors one reckless individual. Just because they have power, everything must be controlled by laws. We can't live like wild animals, can we?" Hearing that, Zeon was left speechless. She could only swallow her anger and think to herself, "Talking to him is so difficult. I called him here because he used to be a congressman and a member of a civic organization. I thought he would be useful. Who would have thought these people would be so stupid as to not understand the true nature of this world? They don't even try to clear the dungeon themselves. They're just a waste of the food their subordinates bring them. I regret calling these people here. They're all talk. Even if we were to punish him, who would carry it out? Who could possibly stand against that monstrous power? What if he gets angry with us and changes his target? These people here just want to restore their own power. In your eyes, Tae San, am I the same as them?" Just as they were about to summon Tae San for judgment, the system suddenly sent out a notification to everyone. A special mission has been opened. The first wave will begin. Waiting time, 12 hours. Defense area, all directions from City Hall. You must kill all enemies and protect City Hall. When the mission was announced, many people rushed into the meeting room in a panic, looking for a plan. Zeon was about to command everyone to fight together, but when she turned around, she saw that the old men had already run away. What a bunch of cowardly loudmouths. You really see their true colors when things get tough. On the other side, Tae San received the same notification. He thought to himself, "It's starting already? Kim Yeon can probably handle herself. In the past, she did a great job leading her team." He looked behind him and saw his two companions had been standing there for some time. The man spoke first. "This is the first time I've met you in person. First of all, thank you. Thanks to you, the other hostages are safe. And that wasn't an illusion, was it? Is this some kind of mission too?" For the first time in so long, he was this close to Zeon. Tae San stared at her intently, not even blinking, as he recalled the past. She's clearly so young. And why does she seem so scared of me in this life? Not arrogant like she used to be at all. Then, Tae San said to the two of them, "The wave will begin in 12 hours. Before that, there's something I want to teach you. Now, draw your swords. Kang Jun-hyuk, you're too reckless. It's good to enjoy a challenge, but it's important to know your limits. However, you don't have any. And, Lighten, you're too timid. That's probably how you've survived until now. But one day, you'll have to give up on rewards you could have earned. I don't want to see you two die. So for this fight, I'm requesting that the stats of both sides be made equal." This question doesn't have a correct answer, so I can't tell you, but at the very least, you two will find out just how high your skill levels are. Hawk panicked and shot back. "Aren't our levels too low to fight you?" Tae San had to explain again. "With this skill, the stats of both sides will be adjusted to match whoever has the lower stats. And of course, I won't use any active skills. Anyway, you don't have the right to refuse, so just accept it. Okay, if you want to fight, let's fight. You think I'm scared of you?" Hawk immediately accepted the request, his mind filled with confidence. "This is my chance. It's time to show him that I'm not weak at all and that I have enough power. With his original stats, there's no way I could win. But now that our stats are equal, I've got a shot." Then, Hawk drew his sword and charged at Tae San. However, something felt very strange. They said the stats were balanced, but Hawk was using two hands to hold his sword, yet Tae San blocked it with just one. It was utterly ridiculous. Then, with just a slight turn of his body, he dealt 8 damage to the young man. Still confused as to why Tae San was so overpowered even with balanced stats, Hawk relentlessly charged forward to attack him. However, by some trick, as soon as he got close, Hawk's entire body was paralyzed by an electric shock. A few seconds later, unable to resist, he was sprawled out on the ground. Tae San stabbed his sword into the dirt and gave a little reminder. Your senses, your judgment, your ability to target weak points. These physical factors are what make the difference. Your strength is good enough for this earth, but if you want to survive in solo mode, it's still not enough. Hawk retorted resentfully. So what if that's true? How can those factors make such a huge difference? Alright, if you want to know, I'll show you. Tae San told the guy to get up and continue the fight, because only through constant fighting can all skills be mastered. After 30 minutes, the result was the same. Absolutely nothing had changed. Hawk was exhausted and lying sprawled on the ground. Feeling that playing with this guy was no longer fun, Tae San shifted his gaze towards the girl, Zeon, startling her. She nearly wet herself, whimpering to him, "I know exactly how weak I am, so we don't need to fight. I'm pretty sure I won't cross any lines." Although Zeon cried and begged, Tae San still initiated a solo match with her. Then, without a shred of pity, he still charged at her with his sword, attacking ferociously. Terrified, Zeon squeezed her eyes shut and screamed repeatedly, "Please, spare me." Despite the girl's pleas, Tae San slashed without mercy. The blow was so powerful it threw Zeon off balance. She collapsed to the ground, then angrily swung her sword wildly at him. Tae San took a step back before quickly closing the distance. He grabbed the girl's arm, pinning it tightly. However, even though Zeon's skills were weaker, she wasn't one to be easily bullied. She used all her strength to push Tae San away. The guy, Hawk, who had been watching from the sidelines, analyzed. "It looks like she's moving randomly, but she's managing to block all of his attacks. She's not simple at all." After backing up to gain momentum, Zeon charged forward at full speed. However, Tae San was even faster. He had already grabbed her by the shoulder and slammed the girl to the ground. How utterly brutal. How could you treat such a pretty girl like that, guys? No. After the battle ended, Tae San encouraged her. "You're not as weak as you think, but that also doesn't mean you can be reckless. That's enough training for today. From now on, I'll tell you too about other skills and how to conquer dungeons, so listen carefully." And so, Tae San talked for hours, from afternoon until late at night, without letting the two of them get anything to eat. When his throat was dry, Tae San finally concluded, "That's all for today. You can share this information with the other players, and I hope you two don't die." Hearing this, Hawk scratched his head. He wondered. "First, you were yelling at and hitting us, but now you're being so gentle and considerate. Something's fishy." Tae San reminded him gently, "If I were really that cold, do you think I would have told you all this information? I've told you everything, so you two can go get some rest. The first raid will begin tomorrow. Take care." Then, the three of them said their goodbyes and left. As soon as they were gone, Tae San turned on the system to check and saw that there wasn't much time left. Fearing that many innocent people would die for nothing, he got up and went to find the girl, Zeon. On hard difficulty, the girl couldn't sleep either, because there were too few people capable of fighting. And on top of that, many useless guys were demanding to be leaders. What a headache. Sensing someone behind the door, Zeon was sure it was Tae San and called out, "What are you doing here, sneaking around like that?" Tae San gently reminded her, "You should close your window. It's easy for people with high stats to get in here." Then he jumped inside to discuss plans with her. She analyzed for him. "First, since they will be coming from all directions, I will divide our forces and station them on each side. Besides, it's difficult to guard the city hall from the inside, because moving that many people around is very inconvenient. So before the quest begins, I will order everyone to go outside. Some people are refusing, saying they don't want to fight. What can I do to convince them?" Seriously. Seeing his sister struggling like that, Tae San spoke up, "Just give me one side. I'm more than enough to hold them off, so you can move the forces from that side to another. Wouldn't that be better?" Joan was stunned. She couldn't tell if this guy was for real or just. The guy looked completely out of it. But with no other choice, John had to reluctantly agree. "You'd better be a man of your word. And what's more, don't you dare fall asleep." And so, with their discussion concluded, Tae San said goodbye to his little sister and left, preparing himself for the battle to come. The next morning, 30 minutes before go time, the most capable fighters had gathered to face the enemy. Since most of them were just ordinary office workers, hardly any had combat experience. So, many were terrified and wanted to run, but had no idea where to go. Among the warriors, only a few brave souls stepped up to lead the charge. Tae San was the same. Even with no one to support him, he stood with absolute confidence, ready to eliminate anyone who came near. When the clock struck 7, the ground suddenly began to shake violently. A few seconds later, monsters swarmed up from the ground, surrounding the city hall. Many panicked and tried to escape. Jun ordered everyone to hold the defensive line and not to flee. Then, she charged headfirst, relentlessly attacking the horde of monsters. However, she couldn't just focus on her own fight. She often had to rush over to protect the weaker ones too. After saving someone, she had to yell out again. The attack power of these monsters isn't that high. As long as we're careful, we'll have a chance to survive. It's time to join forces and fight. Hearing those words of encouragement, many people found their courage and charged in together to attack the monsters. Sure enough, they weren't as strong as they had thought. Many were able to take them down with a single blow, which made Joan light up with excitement. In another development, the solo-level Joan and Tae San were also excelling at their assigned tasks. The players on easy and normal difficulty were dumbfounded. Are those two monsters in disguise? How can they be such beasts? Not knowing how to explain it, they just had to laugh it off. Back to our main character. Perhaps because the power gap was so immense, not a single creature could lay a finger on even a single hair on his leg. With just a few basic moves, Tae San sent the entire mob to the afterlife. After the assault, he hadn't even broken a single sweat. Damn. And after 5 minutes, all the monsters on his side had been wiped out. However, the system had created a barrier so that no one could interfere with each other's sections. So Tae San had no choice but to sit back and wait. With their morale boosted, many people confidently charged forward to fight off the monsters. After a while of fighting, they too had achieved victory. However, their celebration was cut short when a system message appeared for everyone. The second wave is beginning. Defend all areas of the city hall. You must kill all enemies and protect the building. Learning this news, everyone panicked, not knowing how much longer they would have to fight. The tension was real. A few seconds later, from a tier in space, a hideous monster crawled out. Jean realized it was no pushover and broke out in a cold sweat. A young man, who had no idea what he was up against, saw there was only one monster and eagerly rushed forward, hoping to claim the glory. However, this thing was on a completely different level. Despite striking with all his might, the damage he dealt was only one. As he was wondering why it was so tough, he was grabbed by dozens of tentacles. A few seconds later, he was crushed into a pulp. Everyone who witnessed it was utterly horrified, not knowing what to do now. The panic was overwhelming. After finishing off its first prey, it looked extremely satisfied. But, still feeling hungry, it charged towards the crowd, searching for more delicious and nutritious prey. Knowing they were no match for it, everyone, without a word, turned and fled for their lives. Only, John stubbornly stood her ground, shouting for everyone not to run. If we retreat now, we will die for nothing. Just as she finished speaking, a murderous aura shot past her. Thanks to her quick reflexes, she managed to duck to the ground and dodge it. Looking behind her, she saw that quite a few people had already been taken down by it. Just when she didn't know what to do, with a single flash, the grotesque monster was sent sprawling to the ground. On top of it was Tae San, who had appeared from out of nowhere. When the monster was defeated, suddenly an invisible barrier appeared, separating Tae San from the others. Feeling that everyone was safe, he jumped down and rushed to another tier in space-time to check on the situation. As soon as he arrived, a light swing of his sword was enough to send countless monsters to their graves. Once the small fry were eliminated, the system displayed another notification. Special mission. Destroy the container of the dark swamp. Okay, a ridiculously simple mission. Tae San swung his sword and stabbed dozens of times at that gate. However, the gate remained completely unharmed. Then, right after, a gigantic wolf leaped out and attacked him. Instantly, it clamped its jaws on the blood sword and let out a roar, startling Tae San and knocking him backward. It was the first time he'd been hit by a sonic attack. He was a bit surprised, momentarily unsure of how to respond. The numbers and the monsters' names are used to distinguish their strength. The smaller the number, the higher their rank. The monsters, the massive attack waves usually only have F and E rank monsters, but this damned thing is a D rank monster. Back before my regression, a 6-digit number of D rank monsters was enough to push humanity to the brink of extinction. Back in my third regression, I could barely even kill one of these things, but this time, it's different. Tae San charged forward fearlessly to face it head-on. With a sword in each hand, he moved like a whirlwind, inflicting a ton of damage on it. However, with its massive health pool, the attack barely even tickled it. The giant wolf used its huge paw and sharp claws to pin him to the ground. However, thanks to activating his primary skill nullification ability, Tae San didn't take a single point of damage. Immediately after, he used an ice arrow to freeze one of its legs solid. While the wolf was still trying to figure out what the hell was going on, Tae San leaped into the air and plunged straight into its mouth. Right in the middle of its sharp teeth, he cleverly used hellfire to attack its guts directly, burning it from the inside out. After a few seconds of having its weak point attacked, it was roasted to perfection, smelling absolutely delicious. All it was missing was a little dipping sauce to make it a feast. And just like that, the monster was destroyed. To replenish his energy, Tae San pulled a potion from his system and chugged it down. As soon as his mana was fully restored, he used the 18 Palms of Frost to attack the spatial tear. A few seconds later, it vanished completely. The system announced that the special mission was successfully completed. You will receive your reward upon returning to the labyrinth. With that done, he went to check on his comrades. Joan was the only other high-level player on this front, and as a woman, she was nearly exhausted after defeating all the monsters. She collapsed to her knees, sweat pouring onto the ground. Looking behind her, she saw the countless bodies of those who had fallen. It was an utterly tragic scene. Only after seeing hundreds die while trying to flee did people realize there was no other way to survive. Other than killing the monsters, most had to face the worst possible outcome, a helpless and meaningless death. Damn it. If only I could have led them better. Just then, the barrier gradually disappeared. The young woman immediately thought of Tae San, realizing he was all alone and could be in grave danger. So, despite her exhaustion, she forced herself to go find him. But after just a few steps, Jeon collapsed from fatigue. Just as she was about to do a faceplant, Tae San, who had appeared out of nowhere, caught her. Lucky for her, she's a cutie. If she were ugly, he'd have let her eat dirt. In the end, will Tae San be able to defeat all the monsters and bring peace back to the world? Let's find out together in the next part. But for now, goodbye everyone.